the benefits of Inspired Disorder Plus. So you go inspireddisorder.com/plus. Sign up, $5 a month. You get to binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free. You get to watch all of the live painting videos I do. You get a special members-only discount and deals for all of the artwork and merch that I sell. You also get the complete podcast back catalog of every podcast I've ever produced, hundreds of episodes, countless different podcasts. You also get access to my personal blog. A new blog comes out every week. In addition to that, you get my creative writing that I'm releasing. You also get access to Asking Me Anything. 14 years of experience podcasting. I've been creating art my entire life. I've been using Photoshop since middle school, and you can contact me to ask me questions about that or anything else. So those are the benefits for signing up for Inspired Disorder Plus.
Welcome to Screen Drafts, the podcast where experts and enthusiasts competitively collaborate in the creation of screen-centric best of lists. I'm Draft Commissioner Clay Keller. Here with me, as always, my co-commissioner and color commentator, Mr. Ryan Marker.
Let's hear it! Excellent, excellent. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Clay. Thank you.
Ryan.
Yeah.
We're talking about cults today. A topic that... This might be uncomfortable. I never brought this up before.
Uh-oh.
Because it seems like you and the guys at the trailer have a good thing going. They seem perfectly happy with the situation there.
Sure.
It all seemed like, I've never gotten an email from Kai that was like, hey, don't tell Ryan, we have to talk. But some people, and I'm not going to say who, but some people have kind of come to me in confidence outside of it, just outsiders looking in, and
Sure.
said, the situation that Ryan has with the 20 to 30 muscle-bound Venice Beach bodybuilders that live with him in his trailer and adore him and, grovel and wait on him hand and foot seems a little culty. So I thought this is like a good episode for maybe you could address, any concerns that the public might have. Is it like a misconception out there, or...
First of all, I'm a litlittle shocked by this assertion.
Yeah.
That's all.
$10 for the rent.
That's right. And they're all very happy, and it's just everybody stop judging and stick to your own homes. I mean,
nothing
to mention
unsavory has ever happened between just a bunch of California roommates.
Well, I can't say that, but it's all voluntary. It's all voluntary.
All right.
But regardless, I think it's a good segue to actually, in this topic, I find in the last week thinking about it, the definition of a cult is such a fascinating thing to just even think about before you even talk about movies, media, blah, 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 blah. Like, if you really kind of stretch this out, there are many ways you could define a cult. And frankly, like, political parties is a part of it. I think nations can be a part of it.
Well,
humanity at large really is one big cult when you really think about it. So anyway, the judgment notwithstanding,
we will...
It's my trailer.
Right.
I throw it right. I turn the mirror, like Cabaret, I turn the mirror on the audience.
Right. If you're calling Ryan and Kai and Gary and his group there in the trailer, a cult.
Sydney.
Is society, is human history not in itself just a big cult?
Thank you, Clay.
Well said, Ryan. Putting those rumors to rest. Let's bring in our guest GMs. Enough. We haven't talked about the guys in a while.
That's true.
I'm sure that won't be confusing at all to any new listener. Let's bring in our guest GMs today. Joining us on one corner of the virtual draft table, returning a Screen Drafts All-Star, Clark Wolf is here.
Woo! Hello! Oh my gosh, a group of California roommates is a phrase that I will now never forget and is the I will use in conversation from now on.
Look, California roommates.
You know what's funny, Ryan? I've been fortunate enough to know you through this outlet, and I finally met you in person at the Violent Night screening a few months ago. But I don't know you well enough to know what the hell you guys are talking about. So now I have so many questions, and I kind of want to, like, I am single. Can I come to this trailer? Can I meet some of your California roommates if they are hot, Venice, muscly dudes? Like, okay. I could join a cult for a couple weeks, maybe. You know.
Clark, always welcome, but do not call it a cult amongst the boys. I'm telling you.
I could join. I could observe just some California roommates hanging out.
The roommates have to co-sign. We all have to agree that you're allowed to come over. But yes, once all 25 of us say it's cool, you could, the length of time we're gonna have to talk about. I don't know about all that.
Okay. Well, wow. I'm shooting my shot.
Clark is going to be the first person to get a peek behind the curtain there at the trailer. Wow, we'll have to get a report back on that.
I love that Clark, for all 5 appearances, has just been sitting there, like, wondering what the fuck we're talking about. And now she's like, you know what? I gotta ask about this.
It's the cult episode. All the gloves are off. We're gonna all get very real today.
We're going to get very, very real. And joining us to get real, I always love, look, in an episode when we're going to get very real, I'd always love to have a first-timer on the show, because that's certainly not an overwhelming experience at all. Joining us at the other corner of the virtual draft table, a Screen Drafts rookie, Mr. Anthony DeBlasi is here.
Thank you, yes. I have no idea what's going on. First-time caller, first-time visitor. But I am here for the ride.
Getting thrown into the Lions Den, Lions trailer, the California roommates trailer.
I will say that the Manson family was just a bunch of California roommates too.
Just a bunch of California roommates.
I mean, that is true.
Saying the Source family, just a bunch of California roommates. What some people don't understand about California roommates, they look a little different than other roommates.
It's true.
It's okay.
It's true.
It's just. Your roommates. Anthony is here. Clark is here. This is fun. We've done this a couple of times where people look. We have competitive collaborators on this show, but that's not the only kind of collaboration. Most collaborations are not competitive at all. They are just collaborative. And I love to have on people who are creative collaborators, especially when it's times to let everybody know about a project that they worked on together coming out. So this is fun. Clark, obviously you've been on the show a lot. But recently, you acted in a motion picture that's going to be released to the public, and you brought along your director, Anthony. So this is a topic, cults, movies about cults, that I've had. We've done a couple of these recently, Ryan, or we have one coming up with the Train movies draft in next week. But like when we started the show, I wrote down a bunch of topics on Post-it notes. I had them like on my wall, and this is one of those ones that started to yellow with age. I guess Post-it notes are yellow anyway, but I guess maybe it started to fade with age because this has been on the list of things to do for years and years at this point. And I think, Clark, maybe you might have expressed interest in doing this maybe even a while ago, but now it's certainly perfectly aligned. Why did you want to do this topic and bring along Anthony to do it with you?
Because I am a narcissistic actor who wants Anthony to keep casting me in things. And I definitely reached out to Clay like back in August or September and said, hey, have you done cults yet? because I am in this new movie and I am a member of a cult, and that could be a really great. And so, if you haven't, will you hold it for me for when the movie comes out? And then I think Clay, you as lovely as always, circled back, and I was like, yeah, cults. If you still haven't done it, let's do it. That'll be a fun one, but it'll also be a great tie-in for Malum as well. So
you planted that seed, planted it way back during production.
Oh, as soon as I was cast,
Next fall.
I'm always just what.
And I love those moments of kismet where somebody says, "Have you done?" And I'm like, "Oh, thank God, finally somebody wants to do this one. It's gonna be so fun." And obviously, you bring on your director Anthony, who has experience now a few times over making films about cults. Anthony, you've got Malum coming out. You made a movie called The Last Shift. About 10 years ago now? 2014,
yeah,
is that right?
2015, 2014. Is when
you're going back. You love cults. Is that a fair assessment? You love cults?
I really do. And I think if you look at every movie I've made, they always have like a cult-like element. I made like a Fatal Attraction thriller about a Mormon missionary, which is very. I think there's always. I'm drawn to those characters. It's funny because I think on every movie I do, I cast someone who is kind of an outsider. I think they bring a lot of someone who could be in a cult. I like having them in the movie, and I think it brings a flair of danger to every set to have that person that's like they seem a little off, but they're awesome, and they draw you in, right? And then suddenly we're all in a cult, but.
Does this person know that they're that person? Does the person that said know that they are the weirdo?
I was about to say.
Maybe.
Who is it?
Maybe it's the one. No.
It's definitely me.
No, but
believed. I could tell that she believed.
Yes. Yeah.
So obviously you say you incorporate sort of cult-like elements in all of your movies, and you put on set. I mean, this sounds a little dangerous to me, but you put on set an unpredictable element just to capture that energy. Is there something about, obviously we're talking about movies about cults, and we were talking off mic a little bit about, and people were talking on the internet about this as well, about the definitions that we're talking about here and what, but like, are movies about cults? I mean, there is sort of a established, when people think cult, and obviously people, as Ryan was saying, you can apply the term cult and kind of look at things through that lens for a lot of things that we accept as normal or everyday or whatever in society. But when you think of a cult, especially as it exists in pop culture, you've got, as you said, you've got like the leader, you've got the followers. They are maybe isolated off in a little ecosystem of their own that is exclusionary and secretive, and oftentimes they're dangerous. We're talking about horror movies, a lot of them, but also a lot of dramas. I mean, is this a type of movie that you love? Like, where does your fascination with cults come from? Does it come from pop culture or from somewhere else?
I'm not exactly sure. I've always been kind of fascinated with the Manson family, and certainly delved deep into that when I made the first Last Shift, and I think it really is. I like the idea that you could meet someone on the street, get involved with that person, and get sucked into this whole other world of theirs. I think that's like a good representation of life, and I think a lot of the movies I've done follow those kind of characters. Like, hey, can I bum a cigarette from you? Or if someone comes and asks you, and just that one decision can totally alter your life. And I think cults and kind of getting drawn into that lifestyle is always fascinated me and kind of confused me too, which is maybe I drawn to it because it is. I've never been the type of person. I guess I'm more of a loner in terms of I've never been drawn to large groups or felt like I need to feel like that part of a family or something. But I think a lot of people who maybe grew up in unstable households, they're searching for that element, and that's kind of what leads them into. I don't think anyone joins a cult and they're like, oh, well, we're all going to commit suicide, right? That's the goal here. I think they're just looking for family, and then it gets deeper and deeper. By the time they get to the revelation of what they're in, there's just no way out, and that really fascinates me. Even though it is and this is what's great, is that they could just walk away at any time. But it's that feeling of our own like ego that keeps you locked in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the psychology behind joining a cult, and obviously, we eligible today. We'll talk about, there's things like, movies that just use sort of satanic cults that don't really dive into the psychological part of it as much. They're kind of more just like they've been taken over by the devil or whatever. And those are super fun and totally, I love those movies. But it's so interesting that the psychological aspect you're talking about, Anthony, to this. I mean, it's a great subject for drama. It's a great, for a narrative to follow a character arc of someone joining a cult and then coming through the other end, or someone diving into the mystery and the unraveling the layers of terror of kind of trying to get into a cult. I can understand why there's so many movies kind of based around this idea, and so many good ones. I mean, this is a stacked eligibility pool. Clark, you have you also always been interested in cults? You got this part in this movie. Did you do a bunch of research along with that, or like what is your experience with cults?
Well, what's funny is that when I was cast in this movie and Anthony and I did a Zoom to talk about the character, I was already reading Helter Skelter. I had just finished reading it, and I am fascinated. I think as Ryan, very astutely pointed out, when we think of a cult, especially in, we think of the Manson family, sure, or Jonestown, sure. We also think of sort of these movies that I'm sure we're going to talk about today, and Clay, you alluded to, like the satanic sort of idea. But to me, I have been fascinated by a prominent Hollywood group that I would categorize as a cult for many years, and watching documentaries and because I don't want you to get sued, so I won't say which one, but I will say that I am just absolutely fascinated by it, because the thing that I think most people don't understand or don't know is that people who join cults or who find themselves indoctrinated are not unintelligent necessarily, and they're not necessarily down on their luck. They're not, but for whatever reason, there is something missing that this group offers them or could offer them. And then it's the question of, once you're in, how far is too far? How much money have you sunk in? How many of your family and friends have you cut out? What acts have you committed to where you're like, okay, well, no one will accept me now, so I can never leave. The way Leah Remini, in her opinion, explains cults is that the difference between, let's say, a cult and religion is, with a cult, you're not allowed to leave. And, a religion, the idea is, if you go, this isn't for me anymore, I can walk away. Sure, you might have to do some emotional separation, or you might have to do some psychological separation. But, there are cults who physically will come after you, or will physically intimidate you and say, no, you're not going anywhere. And that, to me, was a really interesting distinction that, in her opinion, she's made between a cult and faith. So, I'm fascinated by this, and Anthony and I certainly talked a lot about ideology, because I would say my character in the movie is more of a religious fundamentalist type of a character, whereas Morgan Lennon plays a character named Kitty, and she definitely, and Anthony, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think she and I are in all our scenes together, so we've talked about this a lot, but I think she would say her character is much more Manson girl, whereas my character is much more like tent revival fundamentalist.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, there's so many, as I say, Clark, even within that one film or the one parent, there are different
yes, exactly,
ways to approach it, and different ways that people engage with being. That's so interesting. I mean, we could talk about this forever. Ryan, you said that the guys at the trailer are allowed to come and go at will, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It is all voluntary. They have to go shopping sometimes.
They're sent on errands. Yeah,
of course.
Ryan, movies about cults. I mean, it's And again, to distinct, not cult movies. If you've been listening, you probably fixed ability, Ryan. We were talking about off mic as well. You really could, if you wanted to, you can apply the cult terminology extremely broadly, and I don't think without merit either.
Sure.
There were some people on Twitter who were like, is Jesus Camp going to be up? Look, I was raised in an evangelical church. I think it's a cult. 100%. I have no qualms about expanding the definition of a cult to organized, recognized religions in this country. But in terms of narrative structure and thematic connectiveness and things, we're not including an eligibility today just in movies about Christianity or any other big
Christian
organized
cults.
Religions. These are subgroups. These are, I think there's kind of a smell test that you just say a movie about a cult, and there's a bunch of great ones that you can, look at without having to get too abstract about it.
That is true. All that is true. However, I would also say that, unlike, say, other genres, this kind of defies a lot of genres, because I think that there is a lot of human drama that happens in these movies.
Oh, yeah.
There is a high degree of possible camp and, wacky horror when taken to its extreme. And I just think that speaks to the nebulousness of what this word is, as much as we're trying to define it. I think you're right, Clay, that ultimately this is going to be about a smell test, because, as Clark was saying, it's elusive in terms of why people fall into these things. I haven't thought about this in a long time, but when I was in college, in the middle of the year, a kid that I was roomed with just went home, quote unquote, back to a Pennsylvania town. We didn't hear back from him, and we found out a couple months later, his parents came, got all of his stuff, that he had disappeared with a group, with a cult. And we were just like, wait, what? That's just nuts. And we knew him, and he was he was just an artist. So it was very interesting that even, somebody that I knew, that I talked to all the time, it's not like some, kind of person that's way down on their luck. That it's not necessarily like that. People are vulnerable in many different ways, in different times in their lives, and you just have no idea what will catch their interest. I mean, it really is about finding a person with values, or a lack of thereof, where you can kind of fill that void with a kind of, and it's so scary. I think I that chilled me for a long time, just knowing that had happened. So, that gets back to my point that, you just have no idea, and I think the movies and this pool of movies, which is a huge pool, really reflect that. I mean, in my list, I have all kinds of movies that I'm putting here, and I don't know whether they're going to get played. I'm sort of, a little nervous about my predictions this game. But it's a really interesting topic, and I'm super excited to get into it.
And please, Anthony.
Okay. I said, I'm curious because it's funny, because I'm sure that within the world, there are plenty of communes that would be considered cults that are actually thriving and not culty at all. But I think from the outside perspective, they're like, oh, they're in a cult because they're living off the grid and they're making their own food and they're
for sure
sharing a space. But if, I didn't do the research before we jumped in about how many cults there are in the United States, how many considered cults or within the world. I'm sure there's a fast number that you can find. But I'm sure there are a lot of culty-like communes that aren't cults at all, and there's no threat of danger. But right, in cinema, we've never seen a movie about one of those places.
And if I could just chime in, I know we've got to get started, but the other thing that I've found that's fascinating is that a lot of things that we recognize as cults that have very violent, dangerous ends in real life start with really noble, honorable intentions. It's very easy to just get jump to the end with Manson or Jim Jones or a Hollywood organization that I will not name. But
are you talking about your agency? Who are you with?
I am in the cult of I wish I was in the cult of UTA. UTA, will you please write me? But no, the story of Jonestown and Jim Jones actually begins with him serving under marginalized communities in ways that no one else would, and really doing the work to try to make people's lives better. And obviously that is not excusing the outcome of something like Jonestown, but I think that that's really important for people to know. Is like there's a great, in the movie Going Clear, there's a woman named Spanky, and she is was a big part of John Travolta's life, and she said when she joined the organization, she wanted to save the world, and that is truly, like, she wanted to do good in the world, and that is why she got involved in that group I think she got involved in the 60s. But anyway, so again, these people are not necessarily unintelligent or a lot of them really want to make the world a better place, which I think is even more tragic and compelling and interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's how you... As I was talking about Christianity again, we don't have time for that. We're talking about cult movies. As Ryan, as you pointed out, I love a topic that goes across genres. I don't know. Actually, I don't know how many comedies are eligible, but there are certainly lots of horror movies and lots of dramas. And in a lot of cases, the dramas are far scarier than the horror movies because the idea that, as you're saying, Clark is, susceptibility to being kind of indoctrinated into a cult. The experts tell you over and over and over and over when you're watching these documentaries and things, which are not eligible documentaries. I mean, documentaries about cults could be their own topic in and of themselves. But they tell you it's not about how smart you are, it's not about this, it's not about that. And you just go, okay, yeah, I trust the experts, but like in the back of your head, you're like, but I would never. But I would never. I would recognize this. I wouldn't, not for a second would I be fooled by this. And then it's terrible. Then you watch something. I don't know if you guys watch this thing about the Sarah Lawrence sex cult that this guy. Anyway, this thing on Hulu of this dad of this Sarah Lawrence student who hoodwinked like 8 of her friends and turned them into a sex cult. And you're watching it, and like one of them is this guy brought in his sister who was had a Harvard medical degree and was in like residency, and she got turned into. There's this guy taped everything, and by the end, there's parts where she's like crying and shaking and simpering and begging, and you're like, this like wildly intelligent, successful woman. The human mind is very fragile and terrifying and unknowable, and I don't know, maybe talking about this was a bad idea. Now I'm just getting 10 in the morning.
It can happen at any time.
So anyway, there's a wide pool of eligibility. The different uses of cults, the different types of cults, again, the different genres. I'm very curious to see how Anthony and Clark approach this. But let's get into it. Let's talk about this. Anthony and Clark are ranking the top 7 movies about cults. Let's get into the rules. Screen Drafts is a serpentine-style game. Our guest GMs, Clark and Anthony, are going to be alternating placing picks on the single definitive best-of list for the topic, which is movies about cults. If you are drafter A, you're making picks 7, 6, 4, and 2, which is 4 overall. If you're drafter B, you're making picks 5, 3, and 1, which is obviously fewer picks, but they are weighted higher on the list, and you get that number 1 pick at the very top of the list. The way the draft order is determined is that Ryan has prepared a trivia round. Whoever wins trivia gets to decide if they would like to be drafter A or drafter B. There's a blessing in this game. It's called the veto. How a veto works is that if somebody puts a title on the list that you disagree with, either its inclusion on the list at all, or maybe its inclusion at that particular spot, you can veto it. It knocks that title off of that spot, but not out of the game. It goes back up into the pick ether and can be played by anyone higher up the list. Everybody starts with a veto. If you don't use it, you can roll it over to the next time you're on the show. Clark, you did escape your previous episode with a rollover veto, so you're going to have 2 today. Anthony, of course, kind of a stacked deck against you. Having never had the opportunity to roll over a veto, you are just going to have the 1 veto here today, and you can only roll over 1 veto. So, Clark, you essentially have a veto that will, evaporate at the end of the show if you do not use it. That's it. The other rules are the mooch rule, which means we are not including anything made for television unless our GMs agree that we absolutely need to have a complete list. And I will say, even with that, we only include, if we suspend this rule, we only include movie length things. So we never draft miniseries or series alongside movies. So Clark or Anthony, do either of you want to make the argument that we need to suspend the Mooch rule, the made-for-TV rule, for this topic?
I do not.
I do not.
Okay, there we go. So the Mooch rule will remain intact today. Ryan and I have a side game that we play called the Commissioner Predictions, where before the game starts, we exchange our list of what we think the final list of 7 is going to be. At the end, we revisit those, tally up how many we got correct, and add them to our running total. Right now, I have a 74 to 68 point lead in our game to 100. So there's a lot of game left. We'll see. Ryan could mount a comeback. You never know. Ryan, are you ready to exchange our predictions list?
I am.
First of all, I had like 3 or 4 that I felt pretty good about, and then I was furiously rearranging, crossing things out, adding things before we hopped on the Zoom. Do you feel good about your predictions?
Not at all. No, I'm certainly this is a tough one. Like I said, for a variety of reasons. But number one, when you finally look at the pool, there's a deep well of movies about like Satanism and blah, So I don't feel good at all. But regardless, I went with my gut, and these are the 7 movies that I've seen.
Okay, so that's always a good way to go. I mean, yeah, you're right, Ryan. And to decades. I mean, there's movies about cults going back decades.
Crazy.
The earlier ones are more about Satanism, and then they get into kind of the vagaries between like a Satanist cult or a devil worshipping cult, and then there's obviously the like established Church of Satan, which is like a totally different thing. But again, it's a smell test thing. I mean, it is. Yeah. It is groups. Oftentimes there's a leader. There's something.
An abduction
run in Denmark.
Exactly.
I think we all sort of understand what we're talking about.
All right,
I'm ready to exchange predictions.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1, launch.
All right, I've texted you mine, and you sent me yours in the Zoom chat, so we will check in with those at the end of the game before we talk to Clark and Anthony about their discards. I have assuming there will be a few discards on this one.
Right? I'm feeling good about this now.
Based on my list?
Yeah.
You think yours are better or they're similar? Because I don't ever look at yours before.
I think mine are better, and there is there's a lot of crossovers, which makes me feel good about my picks. So anyway,
very good. The other rule is, like I said, the commissioner override, which is if a title is played that Ryan or I feel strays too far from our agreed upon eligibility parameters, we can call for a review. Then Ryan and I will talk to the GMs and kind of dig into the sort of specifics of eligibility a little bit more. And if Ryan and I unanimously agree that title does not fit our agreed upon parameters, we can strike it from the list. I don't know if that'll come up. It hasn't come up in a while, but we'll see. You never know. This is, again, as we've all said, one of the more amorphous topics we've done in a while. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Them's the rules. Ryan.
Clay.
Are you ready for a little trivia?
Let's do it. 3 rules to trivia, y'all. Number 1 is the Alex Trebek rule, which basically means I have to say my entire question before you answer. If you step on my question, you will be forfeited. And that's that. And number 2 is the Lord Bullington rule, based upon the duel system of Barry Lyndon, the world of Barry Lyndon, in which essentially, Clark, if you answer incorrectly, you have to wait until Anthony answers before it comes back to you, and his answer clearly needs to be incorrect as well. So, just like a duel. And then finally is the Cassavetes rule, which basically means shout it out. You don't have to say your name, no buzzing, just shout it out like Peter Falk does in Woman Under the Influence. So here we go. I have a lot of questions here, so we can just kind of go until Clay stops us.
That's not the parameter. It's the first to 3 is what we always do.
I know it's first to 3. I'm just merely saying that, I have got a lot of questions in case, there's a tie or whatever.
I was just saying it's unlikely today that I will need to come up with an extra question on the fly.
That's the subtext of what I was saying.
Okay, fantastic.
Just sit back
I'll
and
just take it easy then. I'll just sit back and enjoy it.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Number 1. Who played David Koresh in the Showtime TV movie Waco? I have clues.
I know who he is. I just don't remember his name.
Excellent.
But that's an excellent show, and you haven't watched it, see it.
No? Okay.
Mark seems to have no idea.
All right, first clue. In the movie Wolverine First Origins, he played Remy LeBeau, a.k.a. Gambit.
Oh, wow. No.
No?
Still
No
nothing.
for me.
And Anthony, I don't know who's going to help Anthony because he's got the
Wolverine
face.
First Origins fan?
He's got the face. He doesn't know the name.
Hugh
Ryan, can I have a
Jackman's not
clue?
even a Wolverine's First Origins fan, Ryan.
He has poor taste.
Right, I have a clue. Maybe this will open it up for Clark, depending on her TV proclivities. Texas Forever.
I was just about to go there.
You were gonna do Texas Forever?
Well, even more like direct, yes.
Texas Forever. Oh,
Clear Eyes, Full Hearts.
Oh,
Campers.
yeah. Kyle Chandler.
It's not Kyle Chandler.
Oh, Billy. Nope.
Well, now Anthony.
Anthony, you want a shot?
I just can't remember his name. I know his face very well. I just cannot remember his name. And I've seen that show. I love that show.
Clark, do you want to name other people from Friday Night Lights?
The TV show? No. Connie Britton.
Oh, she would be good. She'd be a good Koresh.
I'm drawing a real big blank here. I'm sorry.
His name
is Robert Paulson.
His name is Taylor Kitsch.
Yes, of course. See, if you had said True Detective Season 2 or John Carter from Mars, then I could have helped.
Okay. Who knew? I thought Wolverine First Origins would have said it all.
True Detective Season 2 is a touch point for Taylor Kitsch more than Friday Night Lights?
You know, I just never got into that show.
Oh, really?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Look, Clark, if this sells it to you at all, high school football in Texas, not unlike a cult.
I was just about to say, the love around this show is quite culty, I must say.
Absolutely. Okay, next question. Here
Good
we go.
show,
Number
though.
2. What is a film about a cult that also happens to be a video game adaptation?
Wow, what a question. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom?
Wait a second. A video game adaptation.
Clay, do you know this?
I have a guess. It's one that I have not seen, though, I don't think.
I have a second guess when answering.
Children of the Corn?
No.
Halloween 3?
No.
This is a video game adaptation.
Yeah.
So it was a video game first.
That's right.
Oh.
Silent
Then
Hill?
it became a movie.
That is correct, Anthony.
Good job, Anthony. Oh, I thought it was the other way around. I thought you were saying this movie had a video game adaptation. I'm sorry. Okay.
I see.
I apologize. I did not understand the question.
I was like, Temple of Doom?
No. Okay, now this makes a lot more sense.
Okay.
All right. I think I was talking over it, but it was Anthony said Silent Hill, and that was the correct answer. Okay, there you go. So Anthony goes up 1-0.
Okay, here we go. Number 3. Who played Jim Jones in the 1980 TV movie The Guyana Tragedy? Or The Guyana Tragedy?
I do know this one.
For a show that does not allow TV.
Oh,
I know. I'm going there quite a bit.
Always goes to TV for
Trivia.
Trivia.
I don't
Trivia
have
has
this
no
one.
bounds.
Listen, Clark is an actor. I'm a director. We're very self-involved. We do not know other actors' names.
No, that's not for me. That's not about me. What
Okay, I have one clue. And Clark, you might know this after this clue. Okay. In the great show Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., he played Gideon Malik. No. The face.
That's
it was so much show, you see. There were so many episodes.
I know.
It
He's
feels like
fantastic in this.
I'll guess. Clancy Brown.
No. Close. That's close. No, it was Powers Booth. Powers Booth played Jim Jones.
Ryan, am I going to have to come up with... You say, don't worry, Clay, I've got lots of questions.
You might.
You should take into account whether or not they are way too hard.
Here we go, number 4. Many consider this Edgar Ulmer film from 1934 to be the first movie to feature a cult.
This is a great trivia question.
I was Freaks?
No.
That's Todd
Oh,
Browning.
what a
I didn't know.
good, what a good guess though. Yeah, my guess is not correct either.
I know.
1934.
You do?
I think I know.
Do you want to throw out a guess before Anthony gets another shot?
Sure. I'll say The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. I know that's not the right director though.
No.
So,
Is it Carnival of Souls?
No.
Son of
You're
a-
getting close. I have a clue.
okay.
It starred in this film both Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, and is a Universal horror film.
White Zombie?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, they talk about
The Black Cat.
That is correct.
Good
Anthony.
job.
See,
Anthony.
I close my eyes. I can hear Karina Longworth talking about this movie because she talked
Yes.
about it in her series about Lugosi and Karloff.
Yeah.
Good job, Anthony.
Anthony is
Okay.
up 2-0. He could seal the deal here with this.
Is it best of 72? Is that what it's
Best of 12.
You're getting there. Here we go. Before playing Wanda Maximoff, Elizabeth Olsen starred in
Wow.
this moody piece about deprogramming from a cult. Must
Martha
be correct.
Marcy May. Oh,
Must be a correct title. Go for it, Anthony.
Martha Marcy May Marlene.
That is correct.
I-
Right.
Marlene.
Good job.
Ryan. That was
Wow.
It seemed like you were done, and then you kept going. That was tricky.
I know. I'm
Sometimes
sorry.
you
that
try
was
to
my
pull
bad.
people off sides.
I know,
Trebek rule.
Set me up.
I know. Well, I just wanted, that's a tough title, and I wanted to make sure it was in the correct
It's
order.
really. I feel like at the time everybody made a big joke about like, oh, Mary, Marlene, Martha. No one
Right.
can remember the name. I feel like it's not that hard. Martha, Marcy. I feel like it's got a
I know,
flow to it. It's a
but-
literative.
I got a quick trivia question for you guys.
Oh,
What is her real name in the movie?
Oh, I did
Damn.
not give this one a rewatch.
Is it
So,
Wanda Maximoff?
Correct.
I haven't seen that since theaters, so I do not. Is it one of the four?
It is, yeah.
Oh, of the four. So I'm going to say Marlene.
I'm gonna say May because she's not 70 years old.
I'll
It's
say
Martha.
Martha.
It's Martha, yeah. It's
It's
the first
Martha,
one.
okay.
It's the first one.
I'm on the board.
She's on the board.
There you go. Well, hey, round of applause for Anthony and
Good
for
job,
Clark who got
Anthony.
on the board. Well done. We don't usually have people throw trivia back at us. That was
That's a
thrilling.
That was thrilling. We're in a cult now, by the way.
Yes. Oh, yeah. By the end of this episode, Anthony will have taken over.
Yeah, by the end of
He
this
will now be
episode,
the
we are
host of
gonna,
Screen Drafts, and we will be.
and we will have some pamphlets to show you.
Okay, there you go. That was trivia. Anthony, congratulations. You were the winner.
Congrats.
So you get to decide here your very first ever Screen Drafts decision. If you would like to be drafter A and have more picks on the list, or drafter B and have higher picks on the list, including that number one. How strongly do you feel about what the best movie about cults is?
I'll choose drafter B.
Okay, so Anthony does feel
Wants the
strongly
one.
about it. All right. Anthony's drafter B. That means he'll have picks 5, 3, and 1 at the top of the list. Clark, that means you're drafter A. You're going to have more picks, and you're going to kick us off with 2 in a row here at 7 and 6. And of
right.
course, you're going to send your number 7 pick to me directly in the chat when you're ready to do that. Ryan,
Yeah.
it sounds like Anthony wants that number 1 pick.
What's that number one?
Do you think there's like a clear cut? Like, how many marker musts do we have? Obviously, there's, again, like great deep cuts, indies, studio movies. There's probably some Oscar nominees in here. Is there?
Yeah.
Maybe, but like, there's some canonical classics that fall under this category. Like, do you think there is a clear cut number 1 here?
A clear cut number one, absolutely not, no. But I would say that there are a couple titles, and I would only note 2. I'd say 2 with an asterisk, because my third, I'm like, it's kind of a no-brainer, but I'm an outlier, I think, on it as well. Anyway, I think that there are 2 marker musts here. So
All right, 2.
I think my picks may be outliers, you know. It's all very subjective.
Anthony might have
Very
some
subjective.
outliers. Okay.
I'm also wondering if this is the first episode where a director plays his own movie at the top spot.
I mean,
Happen. There's no
What if
rule
that-
against it.
if I
There's
was
no rule
smart,
against that.
if I was smart, that's what I would do.
Really, we're here to plug.
All right, here we go. Clark has delivered her pick at number 7, so let's start this thing. The Cults draft with Clark Wolf and Anthony DeBlasi. Is it DeBlasi or DeBl? How do you pronounce the last name?
Yeah, De Blasi. That's
I was
good.
doing it right.
Yeah, you're doing it right.
Fucking
Nailed
nailed
it.
over here, DeBlasi. Here we go. Starting off the list at number 7. Clark has selected a film that, if it remains on the list, will join the Marquee of Fame because it was previously played on the Best of 2018 Mega Draft. Clark has selected
Midsommar.
Mandy.
Or Mandy.
Yes, I have selected Mandy. So I actually rewatched this movie this morning, and I'm really glad I did, because there was a lot of it that I just straight up did not remember, and a lot of really interesting, compelling stuff. So I think a good intro to this conversation in terms of, for me, what I think needs to be on this list. There are cult movies. The way I see it, there are two types of cult movies. There's the movie where, a person or a group of people, for whatever reason, are surrounded by a cult, and the cult wants to harm them for some, and it's kind of like a home invasion style assault movie. And then there are movies that I hope show up on this list a little later, that you actually get to know the people involved. You understand why they have the ideology they have. Sometimes you understand the people who are getting sucked into the cult. Sometimes you understand the people who are already in the cult. And for me, Mandy, actually, what I forgot all of the time that we spend with the cult, and not getting to know them and their motivations necessarily, because they're portrayed, I would argue, as fundamentalist and quote unquote crazy. But I forgot that they're not just random people to us. We have scenes with them one-on-one. And so I love the visuals in this movie. I'm really glad I rewatched it, because I remembered people really losing their mind over it, and then I saw it and I was like, yeah, okay, I like that. But it didn't hit me the way that I think it hit a lot of people stylistically and substance-wise. Also, I will say I love Nicolas Cage, and I think he's legitimately one of our most talented actors, not ironically. So to me, there is no Nick Cage renaissance, because he's always been there making great content. Anyway, in terms of the cult elements, this cult is fascinating to me. When I saw this movie in 2018, Dave Bruckner had not been hired to make a Hellraiser movie yet, and I really liked Dave's movie, and I loved the Russell's creations for the Cenobites. But when I watched this movie, I was like, oh, these are Cenobites to me. Like, this is a fun, like, in my head, I went to, cool, what a fun reimagining of something like Hellraiser. So anyway, I really like Mandy, and I think new cult movies deserve to be represented on this list as well. And so, yeah, I think spot number 7 is a really nice place for a movie like Mandy.
Okay, there you go. Kicking off the list at number 7, Clark has selected Panos Cosmatos'.
Panos Cosmatos.
Mandy. Yeah, Clark, I need to revisit this one as well. I was not doing any revisiting of movies this morning because we started recording very early.
I got up really early.
I'm not even awake yet. I saw this after, kind of in the midst of everybody losing their minds about it. So my expectations were so high, you could barely see them. And then I watched it, I was like, oh, it's got a lot of cool images, but I don't really know if this is doing much for me. But I need to see it again, sounds like. This is one that maybe grows on rewatch. I'm curious, because clearly Nicolas Cage goes a million, like, puts his all into it. Which is what a movie like this requires. Anthony, Mandy, a fairly recent pick, a very stylish film, and as Clark said, sort of splitting the difference between a cult as sort of a horror movie boogeyman and as a sort of more full dramatic presence in the movie. How do you feel about this kicking off the list at number 7?
I agree with everything Clark said, and when that movie came out, I did not go see it in the theater, and there was just a huge amount of buzz with it. I rented it when it came out, and I was like, yeah, that was good. I like a lot of the imagery, and but I was like, I don't know why people are going crazy for this movie. But then I watched it again.
I gotta watch this movie again.
Probably a couple of years later.
You want to go outside right now?
And it really stuck with me. I think, and since that watch, I've watched it several times. I actually think that our movie Malum is most in line with the tone of something like Mandy. You know, and for that reason, and I didn't want to do this so early on, is I'm gonna have to veto this because I think it should be much higher on the list.
Wow. Okay, now we're gonna have some fun. Great.
Oh my
Great.
There you go, Ryan. We'll hear from you on Mandy. It sounds like the intention is to put it higher, so we'll hear from you on Mandy winning
later.
Then I gotta send you a new one.
round. So right off of the bat,
Wow,
with his first opportunity, Anthony.
I didn't want to.
Wow.
I feel like she's gonna play a couple that I really want to veto.
Right,
But
Mandy holds a place.
It holds a place. I feel like it should be higher than 7.
Okay.
All right, Anthony feels very strongly about Mandy using his one and only veto in his first appearance here, and the first chance to do so on Mandy.
I love this so much.
So there you go, Clark. You have already supplied me with your replacement pick at number 7. And yeah, here we go. At number 7, Clark attempted to play Mandy. Anthony vetoed that film. Her replacement at number 7, I really like this movie. This is from a franchise that I wish had either fewer entries, so Ryan and I could do it as a 5-film draft on the Patreon, or had more so we could do it as like a super draft on the... They're going to make more of these. It'll be fine. We'll do a whole thing on this series at some point. But look, I think sometimes when series have ever-deepening mythologies, it gets muddy and out of hand and kind of ends up having sort of a diminishing returns thing. This one, I thought they built the mythology in kind of a fun way, and it really hits a fever pitch with this one. At number 7, Clark has selected Paranormal Activity 3.
Wow.
Y'all, I love this movie. I love this movie. I will say Paranormal Activity 1 through 3 is my favorite horror franchise. I agree with what you just said in your intro, Clay. The mythology, straying away from the mythology is the biggest mistake this franchise made. And I am a person that goes to bat for, quote unquote, the found footage style or docu style of narrative filmmaking. The notion, and I think it's because the market was so oversaturated that people are like, it doesn't even take, it takes nothing to make a found footage movie. When in actuality, I think well-crafted found footage movies are some of the hardest movies to make. You know, y'all know I got into a lot of fights about Cloverfield. Deep Eddy's grapefruit vodka may have been involved. Never forget, hashtag never forget. So, but you know, I think I think it's brilliant. And so, Paranormal Activity 1 through 3, the deepening of the mythology, brilliant. And really smart. I'm actually one of the people who stands Paranormal Activity 2. I think it is super well done. I think it is very compelling.
Really good.
But 3, we go back to the little girls. Now, what I really like about this movie as well is, as I said in my little preamble for Mandy, we get to know Grandma Lois here. We get to, so if you have if you watched parts 1 and 2, you know that there is a demon, you know that these legacy of women have been sacrificed by their matriarch for success, wealth, power. To me, that's fascinating because in part 2, we see just like the character of Christy, the little sister, crumbling and falling apart. And so then when we get to part 3 and we see them as little girls and we meet Grandma Lois and we get to know their mother, who we know is dead at this, you know, when we meet older Christy and Katie, I think that's so. We see Grandma Lois at the birthday party and like knowing what she has done. And this is the other part to me that's going to recur in a lot of my picks, is when we get to know the cult members and we know what bargains they have made on behalf of their loved ones. It is the most toxic, like sacrificing their loved ones. It is the most fucked up part of some of these ideologies. Also, the oscillating fan gag is one of my, it's just, chef's kiss. It's so good. I think the little girls are great performances. And I love the parents. I love the mom, and I love Dennis, the boyfriend. It's just it's so great. So anyway, love Paranormal Activity 3. Love parts 1 through 3 and Chris Landon's The Marked Ones, which is the spinoff. So yeah, I love that Anthony used his veto. And now I get to play this.
Yeah, Clark gets to play with impunity now here as she goes on. That's the pick at number 7, Paranormal Activity 3. Yeah, I love these movies as well. I need to revisit them. It's been a while, but I'm a sucker for found footage too. Even at the height of it, I was never annoyed with it. I was the one I was like, oh yeah, bring them on, as many as you can get. Let's keep going. Ryan, have you seen, just before we get to Anthony, have you seen any of these movies?
Not a one.
Not a one.
Oh, wow.
Never saw one.
Anthony, you vetoed Mandy at number 7. The replacement, Paranormal Activity 3. Are you happy with the outcome of this?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm a big fan of found footage as well. I knew Clark. I knew she loved Paranormal Activity, so I figured this would be on the list. I think it's a good place at number 7. I haven't watched it since it came out, but I did enjoy, like she said, I enjoyed the first 3 a lot. And I think the third, the first one, I'm not a super fan of. When I saw it, I felt like it had that kind of Blair Witch phenomenon. I think a lot of people that went and saw it in the theater actually thought it was real. Like us walking out of the theater, a lot of people were like, "Oh, can you believe that really happened?" I'm like, "Well, no, it's a movie, just like Blair Witch was." But when you create that kind of hysteria about something, I think a lot of audience goers do go in, and I think 3 is much more of a narrative film. Like they're like, oh, they're building mythology,
right.
they're telling a story, and I really appreciate it like that.
All right, there you
and
go.
Even, what am I going to do now? I can't do anything. She's going to run wild. There's no recourse.
You went all in, all your chips in on getting Mandy higher at the list. So I'm very curious where that will fall finally. Ryan, you've seen none of the Paranormal Activity movies.
No.
No interest?
No, it's just...
No.
I have not historically been a horror guy in these years, especially when
Right.
something comes out with so many sequels. I get overwhelmed and I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Right. I think probably the last movie you will have ever seen is a sequel to an aughts horror movie.
Exactly. Yeah. We knew each other around the end of this era, and definitely.
Oh yeah. Oh my god.
That was well established at the video.
You didn't start watching sequels at all until I started making you on the Patreon. So
correct.
And
along with horror movies, yeah.
Ryan, similarly, I'm not a sequels person. That's actually why the Paranormal Activity franchise 1 through 3 and the Marked Ones is like such an anomaly for me. Because I'm not a franchise person, I'm not a sequels person, I'm similar.
Right. Yeah,
I only watch sequels without watching the first one. I just jump to number 2. Sometimes, like Scream, haven't seen any of them, but I'm going tonight to see Scream 6. Can't wait.
That's that new one. No, Anthony, I don't know if you're joking or not, but I have a former roommate who genuinely felt that way. She was like, look, they made a sequel. It's probably very similar to the first one, but better. So I'll just watch this.
Wow.
It's bigger and better, and it's probably the same. I'll just
great.
watch the second one.
I love that so much. That makes me so happy.
That's
And
awesome.
she was very consistent with this, and it was infuriating, but hilarious. Okay. And we've got Clark. Yes, Clark knows what the fuck is up. She doesn't need to be prompted. Clark has the pick here at number 6 as well. So let's do this. Okay. All right, at number 7, Clark played Paranormal Activity 3. At number 6, we are going back. We're visiting Summer's Isle, but which one? At number 6, Clark has selected The Wicker Man.
Which one?
The Wicker Man, 1973.
Yes.
Yes. So I'm going to keep this one short and sweet. I don't like this movie. I don't like it.
I don't either.
I
don't like it either.
I've tried so many times. I tried this week. I think it is boring AF.
Yep.
I don't think it's scary at all.
Me either.
Wait, why are you putting it on the list?
Is this a Midsummer maneuver?
This is a Midsummer maneuver, but it's confusing because Midsummer is eligible for this topic. But yes, Anthony, we call this a Midsummer maneuver when somebody is almost certain the other person is going to put it on the list, but they don't want it any higher than where they're placing it. They will preemptively put it at a lower spot. It seems like that is what Clark is doing. Anyway, Clark, continue. The Wicker Man, yes, I'd forgotten this came up on the 70s horror mega draft. I'd forgotten how you felt about this movie.
Yeah.
You're not a fan.
Anthony, I mean, blink once if you don't like this movie.
I'm finding that our lists are like the opposite, like running backwards, inverted. Yeah, because it's funny. And can I?
Please.
It's a good time to jump ahead. It's a good because I think it will cause a lot of drama. I know we're collaborators, but I feel like Clark is at it. Because I was like, I know she's going to put Midsummer on the list, and that's my veto. I want to veto that movie hard. Because to me, Midsummer is just a straight ripoff, not only of the first Wicker Man, but the Nicolas Cage one. There's even a person in a bear suit.
Which I enjoy more.
And don't get me wrong, it's a fine film, but I think Ari Aster has a better movie that deals with the same kind of things. But yes, I know I can't do anything about Midsummer now being on this list.
Oh, Midsummer's not on the list.
Yeah, it will be. I know it's going to be.
Anthony, how do you feel? So Clark, and again, this is confusing for anybody who's not steeped in the mythology of the show. And people will get mad at Clark. I'm going to say for the millionth time, the Midsummer Maneuver is a valid play. If you know the other person is going to put it on and you want to preempt that, there's no rule that says you have to play movies that you personally love on the list. People always moan about this, but that is from the commissioner's pulpit what I am saying. But Clark, acknowledging perhaps the historical importance of this movie. Anthony, The Wicker Man 73 here at number 6. This is where it's going to be unless you maybe can convince Clark to veto herself to keep it off the list. But how do you feel about this at number 6 on the list this time?
I think it's fine. I think it's. I do agree that it belongs on a definitive list of cult films. I think you can't keep it off. And I did rewatch. I've seen it several times. I did rewatch it again this week, and it's a weaker film than I remember it being. I when I was like in my teens and 20s, I loved The Wicker Man. Probably back then because there was a lot of nudity in it. I was like, oh, this movie's great.
It's a very sexy movie in some ways, with a lot of singing.
Well, that's the thing. It's like a pagan pageantry. I mean, it's a musical, really, when you watch it. And it's funny, revisiting a lot of these cult films, I think that a lot of them are musicals in a way. I think maybe The Wicker Man started that. But yeah, I'm glad it's on the list. I wouldn't. Would I have put it higher? Probably, just out of like, if someone had never watched a cult movie before, I think it's a history lesson. They should see The Wicker Man, So I think it's good. It's good here. Clark hates the movie. It's good here. It's good.
That's exactly what Anthony said. Which, by the way, Anthony, I think we're not as combative as maybe you might.
No, I want to be. I want to.
Oh, okay. Let's let them think that we just so excited.
This is what happened on set. It was like this every day.
I can't stand him. That's why I suggested him for this podcast. I hate spending time with Anthony. But no, I do think. Being a little bit of the film sweaty that I am, even though I really don't like this movie, if we're doing a movie about cults, it has to be on this list, and even I can acknowledge that. And so Paranormal Activity 3 was my little, this one's for me. And then now it's like, okay, I hate this. Let's get it over with.
Okay, the fun's over.
Yeah, but no more. Yeah. So anyway,
I will say in The Wicker Man, it has this great moment in it where he's in the classroom and he's you're all little liars because she's looking for Rowan Morrison. He's like, you little liars. And he opens this girl's desk and there's a beetle on a string walking around a nail. And that's so good in the first act because, she's like rounded round till it ends up wound up tight on the nail, and that's exactly what happens to him. It's a great thing that they put in the first act to kind of allude to what's happening to him.
Beautifully tied in, representation of the themes and what's going to happen, foreshadowing, and then in the remake, a crow flies out and he goes, "Wow!" Which is also just elegant filmmaking. I love
Neil LaView, very elegant. When I think of one word to describe him, elegant.
Listen, let's, coming into the show, and I know it's like a best of, but I'm really tempted to put the Wicker Man remake on this list, but I think now is a good time to segue into it for a couple minutes without having to burn a slot on it. I think the Wicker Man remake will probably be remembered more so than the original. Like
Chelsea Stardust and I were just having this conversation yesterday. She said the exact same thing. It's gonna have a renaissance. People are gonna yes.
Yeah, like that. Like, to me, when that movie came out and rewatching it recently, it's so, that was Cage before people accepted Cage, like Cage uncaged. That was Cage in chains, right? He was like, people were like, I think he very much knew what he was doing when he made that movie. I think every intention. Yeah. And there's some imagery and stuff in that movie that I'm just like, I don't know how this movie got made. I'm glad it exists. The bees, the bear suit, him punching every woman that comes across his path, drop kicking Lila Sobieski. I mean, if people haven't seen this movie, and if you enjoy this is Nick Cage at one of his finest moments, and that crow moment. I mean, everything about it.
That scene. I mean, and yeah, look, we could talk about the 2006 Wicker Man for the rest of this show, but yeah, I mean, that was the one I was familiar with, obviously first. And then I saw the original only a few years ago, and it is. I think I'm with you guys. Like, it's not an instant favorite of mine, but it's so strange, and I do love all of the music, and of course, just the iconic imagery, the image of the Wicker Man, with Christopher Lee standing in front of it with his arms. I mean, that is. I think perhaps the Nicolas Cage version will get watched more as the years go on. Yeah. But that image is still going to be on the cover of every fucking book about horror movies. I mean, that is just kind of, burned into culture now. Really interesting movie. Ryan, you've been sitting silently. The Wicker Man already has a Marquee of Fame hat trick. It's been on the list. It's been on 3 drafts, so this will be its 4th inclusion. So this is well cemented in the annals of screen drafts, The Wicker Man. Is everything that Anthony and Clark and I have been saying sacrilege?
No. I mean, it's always been a bit of a divisive movie, and I feel like this reflects that. The fact that it's where it's at, I mean, totally understandable. It's a very strange movie. I don't necessarily think the themes completely play out the way we think they should. However, it just has a power to it, I think. Every time I've watched it, you kind of feel that this is a brand new type of movie. It's like, again, outdoor horror. There's a folk horror to this. Absolutely, it's a musical, and a fantastic one at that. It's just a weird-ass movie, and like that, it sort of has to be here, because this is sort of the subgenre of the cult movie in and of itself. I sort of think this pagan kind of daytime thing that Midsummer totally,
on an island.
Yeah, it's just it's a whole vibe in and of itself, so it has to be here. The fact that it's sex, totally understandable, what with our players' thoughts on it. So, all good.
That's a good point, right? It does feel almost experimental because the main character, the guy, he's not like Nick Cage. The main guy in the original is a very, like, buttoned up, like, British fuddy-duddy guy. And just, like, it's like they plucked him out of, like, a 50s movie and drop him into this place where there's sex and nudity and all this weird stuff, and he's just, like, terrified. And like, it is really it's really interesting. It doesn't move as quick and hit as many, like, pleasure centers as the remake, but it's really interesting.
But it's so mysterious that, like I'd say the one thing that the DNA is the same on is these are movies about cults that truly are cult movies. I mean, like, The Wicker Man, for years I grew up hearing about, saying, and then you'd see the cover and it's this animated cover. It was not like a normal movie in any way, so it's sort of like a movie you discover. You know, your friends are like, "You've got to see this bizarre
Yeah,
film."
I mean,
So.
surely the existence of the remake boosted the visibility of the original, I think,
Sure.
quite a bit.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, and fun fact, I'm here on the Screen Drafts wiki page, right? I didn't remember this. The Wicker Man, 1973, was the very first movie on the Marquee of Fame. It was the first movie to be drafted multiple times.
Wow.
In the history of the show. So there you go. Wicker Man, always love revisiting that one. And here it is at number 6. So those are Clark's first 2 picks. Anthony,
Right.
we are over
Anthony,
to you. When you're ready with your pick at number 5, message it to me directly in the chat.
Okay. So I'm preemptively, I'm sending this to you. I think it deserves a place on this list. And
Okay.
I think it's probably the most mainstream movie that would ever end up on a list of mine. But I think where we are in the game, I'd be like, I think it's a good place to play it here.
Oh, right.
And maybe it's up for debate.
Love that type of preamble. Very, very excited to deliver this pick and see what people think. Okay. Here we go. So Anthony already got involved in the gameplay using his veto on Mandy at number 7. And we'll see where that ends up being. It's not going to end up being at number 5. Because at number 5, Anthony has played a title that sometimes in the opening of the show, when we're exchanging pleasantries and talking about this and talking about that, setting the table, I will adjust my predictions based on things people have said in the opening. And I had the thought when Anthony was speaking at the beginning, I was like, I really should add this movie to my predictions, because I didn't. I just didn't, like a dope. I had the thought because when Anthony started talking about his early fascination with the Manson family, I thought, damn, this might be on the list. At number 5,
Is coming.
Anthony has selected Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Nice.
Anthony, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, so this is with the man. It's funny because like going back, I was like, okay, we're gonna do the show. I love lots of Manson documentaries. There's some great Manson documentary. Manson 1973 was an unreleased documentary. Is a movie that both on Last Shift and on this one I asked the cast to watch because it just gives you such an insight. It was a movie made when Swiggy Fromm attempted to assassinate the president. The movie never got released because it became state's evidence. It was nominated for an Academy Award that year, but it never got released. And I actually ordered it directly from one of the Manson family members. I got it on eBay. I think now it circulates YouTube, but at the time when I made that first movie, I had to order it on eBay. It came and it smelled like beef and it had my name on it. Clark saw the DVD.
We watched it.
They watched it, and then she was like, "Well, it's on YouTube now."
Was it
We
sort of
didn't
like a
tell him.
supernatural?
No,
internal
it was
beef smell?
actually. This is actually quite cute and sweet. Anthony was like, we were shooting in Louisville, and he was like busting his ass, and like Morgan and I we shot 5 days on the movie. He's got like all these other things going on, and he's like, we have to get Clark and Morgan a DVD player. Who has a DVD player? Who is so like Dee Dee, sweet girl, who's also in the movie as one of our, she gave us like her Blu-ray, and and Anthony's like, we have to get them this DVD, and we were like, should we tell him it's on YouTube? And it was so adorable.
I kind of wish they did because it would have saved me time.
I know. We didn't want to, but we were like, it's so sweet. We don't want to hurt his feelings.
I mean, you have to admit that, like, seeing the DVD and holding it, at least to me, had a certain amount of mystique to it because it really was.
Signed, right?
It was signed, yeah. It was signed. Yeah. The guy who made the documentary, a Manson family member, he made it. He burned the copy himself. He did the cover. He put my name on it. He made it smell like beef. He signed the DVD. I don't know. So it has a certain mystique to it that I think it's worth, but long segue to lots of great documentaries. And I was like, man, there aren't really a lot of good films on this topic. Like, I wanted to watch, what is it? Manson Says?
Charlie Says, which
What?
I did watch.
Charlie Says, yeah, I didn't have time to watch it because I did want to watch it, so Clark can be the judge of that one. But with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, obviously there's so much going on in the movie, and you know, if someone hasn't seen the movie, they'll probably be like, why is that on this list? But the Manson family is such a huge part of it, and I think I kind of totally knew. I knew how that movie was going to play out because I heard Tarantino talking about the movie and said he's like, it's most like Inglourious Bastard. So I'm like, oh, okay, I know how this movie's going to end. And when it ended, I was really moved. Like the first time I had seen it, I was like, I got very emotional at the ending. I think it was very cathartic for the audience to see kind of a rewriting of history in that way. And I think he played that very well. This like revenge fantasy movie with Brad Pitt and DiCaprio just like tearing the Manson family up, and you know, and the earlier scenes with the Manson family, it's a really strong depiction of them, not too cartoony. It gets a bit cartoony at the end, but in like a very joyous way. But the cast of that movie, you know, Charlie's a little meager in that. I think not very threatening, and I think probably Tarantino did that on purpose. But it just gave me great joy to see the Manson family die at the end of that movie and have Sharon Tate live. And for the people who had no idea that was the way it was going to go, it was great, like watching them experience that in the theater.
Yeah. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. There you go. Another one already in the Marquee of Fame. So assuming it stays on this list. I mean, people have heard me talk about this movie on this show. I adore this movie for a lot of the same reasons Anthony did. Yeah, I got very emotional at the end. Recontextualizing that, you know, Sharon Tate was a person. Like, what if the Manson family had been, relegated to the dustbin of history of some hippies that showed up in a house and got killed? You know, it could, you know, who knows? And then, you know, fascinating to think about, and a really interesting way to use movies to kind of try and not rewrite history, but make people kind of think about the way history has treated certain people. But yeah, and also, of course, you know, I love the parallel of or the idea of casting, you know, what we call now Nepo babies, but like children of Hollywood, as the Manson girls, is just kind of funny, but also I think it's kind of making an interesting point about the cult of the town at large, the cult of Hollywood, and how, you know, even the characters who are seemingly unconnected to the cult, like Leo, is just, he will debase himself, he'll do anything to please the cult of Hollywood and whatever. So yeah, anyway, this movie, really well made, killer soundtrack. When the Manson family comes up over the hill to that Stones needle drop is just
iconic.
No, the Stones is Baby It's Out of Time. It's the needle drop is oh, come on, what's the band? This is gonna drive me insane. when they come up over the hill up into the neighborhood. It's one of the bands they use a lot in the movie.
I don't remember.
It's too early.
Ryan, come on,
I'll look it up.
I don't.
Ryan doesn't remember. I'll look it up while Clark talks about how she feels about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood on this list.
So I'll just make a couple of quick points. The first thing I'll say is I'm not going to veto this. I think that with Manson, there have been so many depictions, and he hit the legacy of the idea of the cult, especially in the United States. He is really important to that legacy and the girls and all of it. So it needs to. I had a feeling it was going to show up. I wouldn't have put it here on the list, but and not because I prefer Charlie Says. I love Mary Herron, but I just think, you know what I think it is just like the reenactments of Manson are boring to me, because I think they are really, you put your own bias on what that story is. So is there a spin that's like the girls were victims? Is there a spin that is the girls had agency? Is there a spin that's, is it a both? Was Charlie really that dangerous? Was he not really that? Was he, it's just, we all bring our bias to that story. What I will say about, so that's the cult part of it. What I will say about the reimagining of the ending. So, in Django, you have Jamie Foxx and Kerry Washington, two black actors, get to annihilate a plantation, and that is symbolic and empowering. I am Jewish, so at the end of Inglourious Basterds, watching these Jews murder all these Nazis and Hitler is very cathartic. And knowing that, Jamie Foxx and Kerry Washington are both black actors, and knowing that a lot of the cast of Inglourious Basterds who were the bastards are actually Jewish, there's something really empowering there. I was horrified when Margot Robbie's character sleeps through it. That is insulting and offensive to me. And these boneheads of Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio, who have been portrayed as boneheads the entire movie, get to have this hero moment. That is bonkers. And knowing the precedent that Tarantino had in this revisionist history, I was so bummed out that they just let her take a little nap. So I don't care for it. Not a fan of the movie, not a fan of the depiction. And also, I overheard somebody in a Starbucks line talking about the movie after the fact, and they said, I heard somebody say, what's Sharon Tate doing now?
It's like the Paranormal Activity thing. They think it's like now it's real, right?
Right, exactly.
It's real.
We all know, so I say that to say I actually don't care for this choice that Tarantino made, especially given the precedent in those other two films. But that said, this is a list about cults. This is an interesting depiction of Manson. Also, I'll say just enough Manson. Because that was my thing with Charlie Says, is I'm like, I can't watch 2 hours of this. Like, the documentaries are more compelling.
Right.
So anyway, it stands, but those are my thoughts.
I can see that for sure. Like, hearing you say it, it does make sense. There is a version of this movie where Sharon has the day. And participates. And I honestly didn't think about it until you said it, because I'm like, yes, there is a version of this movie where that is the revenge fantasy, and I think probably equally as would have been much more compelling for you, but would have been a choice that I think audiences would have totally got behind. And I guess I think because obviously DiCaprio and Pitt are the leads of that movie, and I enjoy them in that movie. And yes, they are boneheads. Them being the heroes of the story, to me, made sense. But there is totally a movie there where Sharon rewrites the history.
And I didn't need, especially, I will also say that within the context of what we're talking about, I don't need Sharon Tate to become somebody she's not. That you know what I'm saying? Like, she's been portrayed in a certain way in this fictionalized interpretation of her. I don't need her to become Harley Quinn, right? That's not what I'm saying. Right. But if she had some agency, and let the guys be the heroes, right? Let Brad Pitt and Leo's characters be heroes and let her do something too. That's more of what I would have preferred.
That's interesting. Yeah, she could have been involved in some way. Yeah, because as you said, Clark, it's interesting because they didn't portray her. I don't think Tarantino probably didn't want to show her as someone who has like a bloodlust in her or something, whereas it's very, safe to have the quote-unquote heroes of the movie, who are not necessarily portrayed as great guys, have to do the dirty work, and she kind of gets to stay angelic, which is maybe she should have gotten involved. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that before. Ryan, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, as Anthony said, perhaps the most interesting depiction of the Manson family in a narrative feature. Obviously, lots of interesting documentaries out there. And I do like his point that it's interesting that Tarantino sort of, there is this romanticized fascination with the Manson cult, and kind of just seeing them in a light where they're not super well organized. Manson is kind of a dweeb. Like it's kind of portraying them as just, I don't know, less. Not heroic is not the right word, but less scary, less mythological than they've sort of the place they've taken in culture and the collective consciousness. I think that's an interesting point, Anthony. Ryan, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood here at number 5.
Very interesting choice. Very interesting movie. I mean, I've often kind of wanted to come back to this movie, just especially with the way Clay talks about it quite often. One thing that I do remember, and I would say that this is an interesting inclusion only because this movie is a lot of different things all at once. It's a lot of different characters and it's a lot of different portrayals. That said, it is for me the one. You're right about the depiction of the Manson family, but I feel like what is the power here is the creepiness of how this idea that there was this cult that again popped up out of nowhere, took a bunch of vulnerable people and changed the world like overnight. Yeah. I feel like Quentin captures that more than anybody else with this movie by going away from him. I definitely think that the Bruce Dern sequence I think is such a creepy scene. Maybe creepier than many Manson, like right. and getting back to the different subgenres of this, you can always go about a cult film from the outside in. You're the outside perspective looking in, and that's what this definitely fits into that. Whereas clearly, there's many that are like you're part of that Marcy May Marlene, scenario, and that's not what this is. So I think there's a very strong power to this movie. It's also very hilarious, and it's just a lot of things all at once, and it just has a mysterious power to it. Clay, you and I have talked about it a lot. We just showed Boogie Nights recently, and there's just a power to that movie based on just the general accuracy of the times, the way that they're accurately able to portray not just the production design, but the air. You feel like you're breathing the air of that time, and Boogie Nights does that. This movie does that. It's so rare when that's able to be captured, and when it does, it has a power that I think is really hard to explain, and this movie does that super well. So again, interesting inclusion. I'm very interested to see what listeners are going to say about this one, but cool. I'm always down for it. I cannot argue it at all at the same time. It's clearly, as I said, has a Manson family cult aspect to it, but the weirdest way possible. The Manson family in and of itself is such a strange story, but one that I think we're all drawn to because of this atmosphere in this movie, where it just popped up out of nowhere and became an instant. This world that we think is so protected is not protected at all. So
and they do a good job in this movie. I mean, it's the last thing I will say is, Tarantino is such a specific filmmaker. He talked about wanting that's that sequence, right? That super creepy Spawn Ranch sequence where Tarantino said in the background of every single shot he wanted a stray dog. And just like reinforcing that this family, they are, Manson was this sort of like Fagin type character from Oliver Twist, like collecting these strays and sending them out to do their things. These people who hadn't had, in this case, young women who had not fully developed and were looking for that, place to belong and everything. And he just, anyway, it's creepy movie. And for everybody who's been screaming into their headphones. The needle drop I was trying to think of was 12:30 by the Mamas and the Papas, where Sharon puts on the record and it goes to the outside and the car pulls up as that song crescendos, and no one drops a needle like QT. Okay, at number 5, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Very good. All right, we are gonna have the number 4 pick from Clark.
You ready? We're gonna keep going.
I am ready.
I'm good. Okay,
we're gonna take our intermission after we discuss this pick at number 4.
Great.
All right. Here we go. So at number 5, with his first pick ever on Screen Drafts, Anthony selected Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. At number 4, we've got Clark's pick. This is a movie I love. In the brief period back at the original Vidiots, when I was programming things for our micro cinema, we played this, and I did a Q&A with the writer and director, That was really, really fun. I really love this movie. It's one of the only movies that really got under my skin watching it, like, with the lights on my laptop. So it's great filmmaking. And hey, Clark may not be the biggest fan in the world of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but she's clearly a fan of the Hollywood Hills, because at number 4, Clark has selected Karin Kusama's The Invitation. Creepy shit happens in the Hollywood Hills, Clark.
It does, and if I may, once again, continuing the theme of being a narcissistic actor, I just directed a short that takes place it's a horror short, and it takes place in the Hollywood Hills, and the Invitation, actually, the opening of The Invitation, the opening credits, and that sort of like descent up into it was a huge inspiration to the opening of my movie, but this is not about me. This is about Karin. No, I picked this movie because I kind of alluded to it a little earlier, and there's one other movie that I hope makes it onto this list that I'm going to try real hard for, that I think is one of the most personal looks at how and why cults. The Invitation is, Logan Marshall Green's character is, divorced. He and his ex-wife have lost a child, and the grief, how do people process this grief? And, for Logan's character, he's clearly struggling, but for his ex-wife's character, she has found what she thinks is solace and peace and vision and belonging and understanding. And I think that as a person, Clark, like, I'm fascinated by conspiracy theories, and I'm fascinated by cults, and I think they are cousins, if not siblings. But the reason that, again, smart, capable, intelligent, like, strong people are able to be indoctrinated into these beliefs, I would argue, is a lot of time due to unfathomable circumstances. And that is what I think is at the heart of what is so compelling about movies, about cults, that are not, let's say Ride with the Devil, where, oops, we accidentally walked in on a satanic sacrifice and now they're after us, So I love this depiction. I think it's, and I love how calm everybody is. John Carroll Lynch, anytime he shows up, it's bad news. So I think that, and look, it's I'll just say it because I think it's important to say, I like the idea that I love Karin's sensibilities, and I think that having, it's the same with sort of like, I appreciate Mary Herron's take on the Charlie Manson mythology in Charlie Says, and I think that there's something about a female voice behind the camera that I think is important when we're talking about these subjects. And so that's not why I picked it, but I did want to just point it out that, like, I think it's good to have a female filmmaker on here. And so yeah, that's my choice.
All right, Clark's pick at number 4, The Invitation. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, Clark, the female voice, because at least certainly in the films we see, it's, the kind of the standard setup is, I feel like more often than not, women are the victims of these
Right.
things. I mean, looking at the list of eligibility, certainly in a thing like a Manson type situation, so it is interesting to see that perspective. I hadn't thought about that in relation to this movie, but that's really interesting. The Invitation, like I said, love this movie. Incredible control of tone, strong core idea, one of the best endings, an ending that absolutely puts a chill in your bones.
Visually, so
the way that she lets the audience know. Obviously, you go into this movie, it's about a cult, like, it's a horror movie, like, you're expecting things, but the way she just seeds in the unease from the very beginning with things that happen, but also the way it's the pace of the edit and the score and everything, and just every time anything happens, like you said, John Carroll Lynch coming, leaving, I'm gonna go get my car, and all of those moments, you're like, when is the fucking hammer gonna drop on this? And then she keeps it to like a tight, it's like 100 minutes maybe. Great movie. Anthony, Karin Kusama's The Invitation, here at the middle of the list.
Middle of the list, I completely agree with Clark. So Karin Kusama's The Invitation was actually going to be my number 1 pick. I love this movie. I've seen it several times. I watched it again this week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was going to be the top of my list. For sure in the top 3, because I just think it's such... And I will say, revisiting a lot of these cult films, I feel like in the last 10 years, most of my picks are from the last 10 years. I don't know why. I mean, maybe just some movies have been forgotten with history, but I clearly never forgot The Wicker Man. But I just think it's such a strong film. It's so well paced. It's so... The acting is just... I mean, it's like a masterclass in filmmaking. It really is. And, you know, Logan Marshall Green in that role. Again, you're so... You know he's right the whole time, and they play that so well. Him just like... I just love how direct he is. I love how he never... Because in so many movies, people are too polite to say things, and he's just like, listen, my son's dead. You're all being fucking weird. You're all being weird. Why are you locking the door? I feel like that's me at a party. Like, you know, if someone locks the door, I'm like, why the fuck are you locking that door? Like I don't know you. Don't lock that door. Like, that's me. That's I most relate to him. And I just love how right and paranoid he is at the same time. My biggest question about this movie, and if no one's ever seen it, did Claire survive? They never answer that question. You know, Claire is the one with the senses in The Invitation. Very early on, she's like, you know, once people start making out, she's like, I don't feel comfortable. I think I'm going to leave.
Right.
And, you know, and Pruitt, John Carroll Lynch, he goes outside. There's that great moment. But they do never confirm what happened. You know, did he just actually try to convince her to stay and let her go? I would love to ask the director about that, or the writer. Like, do you think she lived or died? Because it's not one of those movies that are like, she's in the closet, there's her body. I'm always like, did she live or die?
No, it should have. I mean, no, it's setting up Claire's Revenge and Invitation Story.
Sequel.
Sequel.
The expanded Invitation verse. Man, yeah, killer movie. Like you said, Anthony, masterclass. And the control, like I said, the control of the tone is just like a symphony. Clark does have, you can veto yourself. Just throw that out into the consciousness. As I talked to Ryan, The Invitation, obviously you were there in the Vidiots days when we had Karin in to talk about this movie, and her husband's name, who is the writer,
Phil Hay.
Phil, yes, Phil Hay, yes. And then actually he has a writing partner.
Manfredi, I think
you.
yeah.
Clark with the save. And they're all...
I know trivia sometimes.
delightful to talk to, and that movie played so good. Actually, I think I paired it. I did a double feature of that, and then the second picture was Cheap Thrills, the film with Pat Healy, just as sort of a bad things happening in the Hollywood Hills double feature.
Yeah.
We could honestly do a whole draft of the Hollywood Hills. The 80s certainly had no shortage of Hollywood Hills movies. But anyway, Ryan, The Invitation, here in the middle of the list. It would have been Anthony's number... Anthony picked Drafter B, so he could put this movie at the top of the list.
That's the story.
And Clark has placed it here at number 4.
I'm a little befuddled how this is going to go down. Shamefully, I have not seen this movie.
You still have not seen this?
Clay, I know. First of all, going back to that night, I was running the store while you were running the event.
That's true.
I would have seen
Fair.
it that night had I not been, renting out movies. But yes, in the years since, that was like, what, 2011? I don't know. It was a very long time
No, this movie
ago.
was 2015? Yeah.
Okay, still, very long time ago, and I haven't seen it since. And it's a shame. It sounds fantastic, and this is probably what I'll watch.
Oh, you'll love it, Ryan. You will.
Post show today, I will sit down with this one. So, yeah, cool.
If they need to, whoever needs to be convinced to do this, they need to strike a print of this so they can add it to the rotation at the New Bev. I think this would be, you could do this every year and people would come out at the New Bev.
Okay, it's an idea.
Absolutely. Okay, actually, it came out in that weird time when theatrical was dying and people were, but before, like if this movie, if it had come out on Netflix in 2020 or 2019 or something, I think it would have made a much broader splash.
Agreed.
Because it plays like gangbusters, and it got released in a weird climate. Well, there you go. The middle of the list, The Invitation. Okay, we're going to take a quick intermission and be back with the top 3 picks. But right now, this is the list. The Movies About Cults draft with Anthony and Clark. Number 7, Paranormal Activity 3. Number 6, The Wicker Man, 1973. Number 5, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Number 4, The Invitation. We'll be back with the top 3 picks in just a moment. We're back. Okay, just gave the rundown of the list thus far, and we've got 3 picks remaining, but first, let's do a little plug-in. Plugs. Neither of you are here for any specific reason. Is that correct?
No, I got nothing to talk about.
No plugs from Clark. Okay. Anthony, you have anything to plug?
I'll let Clark plug first. He's plugging the same thing.
Yay, Malum! May I actually, speaking of plugs and Malum, I would like to weigh in on something that I think Anthony might have something to say about. So, it's funny because, on Twitter and the internet, and obviously we know not to pay super close attention to that, but I've been seeing a lot of, the trailer reaction was oh man, they're remaking The Last Shift already? And what I think is so interesting is, for people that don't know how independent movies are made, I mean, I would argue, and Anthony, please chime in, but the idea that you are being given resources and time and something a little, to revisit material, to me is like a dream for a filmmaker. And so I kind of just wanted to talk about that real fast, because I was I think it's such a blessing that Anthony was able to do this, and it's not a Hollywood has run out of ideas. It's let's give a filmmaker an opportunity to expand on what maybe he couldn't do or wanted to do, couldn't do, whatever. But I don't want to speak for our director extraordinaire.
That's a good volley, Clark. There, I think this scenario, and I really like watching the Twitter exchange there, because it is an education process. I think the main thing, the Welcome Villain team, when they came to me and said, "Hey, we really like that movie you made Last Shift. Do you want to do it again, but bigger?" And people just don't know for how little money I made that first movie. And I did it with a team that I made a couple of other movies with, so we were kind of a well-oiled machine. And so getting the opportunity to do it again with a much bigger budget and completely kind of reimagining it, it is much more akin to an Evil Dead 2 thing. It is not the same movie. It was just a way for us to be okay, now we can just kind of tell a different story and really tell it the way we wanted to, and go much deeper with the characters and the villains in the film, especially, which Clark plays one. So yes, it was great. It was a lot of people, I think most people ask me well, how is it remaking your own movie? And I will admit, when I wrote that first treatment, I was blah, here's the movie. It's just like the other movie. It's 6 pages long. And then after that, through that process, it was oh yeah, I started to get excited about it. And when I made the movie, I didn't even think about the first one. It didn't even cross my mind. I didn't feel like I was remaking it any step of the way. It felt totally different the entire way. So I was never bored by the process, or oh, I'm retreading ground that I've already done. None of that happened.
Interesting. And would you encourage Anson? I mean, it's when you say it's more of an Evil Dead 2 thing, or what was that? The LA Takedown, the thing that Michael Mann made, that was basically just a Heat, but 6 years earlier, and that once he became Michael Mann with 2 capital M's, he got to go back to it. Yeah, and do it huge. Would you say it's it sounds like it's sort of akin to that?
It is akin to that. I gave the publicity team a list of it. As far as this happens a lot with foreign directors, but with American directors, it's very rare. Cecil B. DeMille remade the Ten Commandments, and there was another movie that An Affair to Remember was remade by the same director, but not since then. you know, Michael Mann being the exception of doing a TV movie that really no one saw and then making it into this like one of the best movies ever made, you know. That it is, you know, that is what we got to do on this. But and I think probably when he made LA Takedown, it was like, man, I got so much more story to tell there. Let me make it into this great film.
And so it's not even and I have not had the opportunity to see it yet either. It seems like, Clark, you have not, right? You're saying you have not seen the finished movie yet.
It comes out theatrically March 31st.
March 31st.
Which is when Anthony wants me to see it, which I'm like, come on.
No, like, you can see it at the premiere, which will be like 3 days ahead of time.
I will see it before the premiere, so to just go. I keep coming back to Anthony, and I'm like, people keep reaching out to me and saying, I saw Malum, I saw the movie, and I'm like, I know everyone. My tentacles are in everything.
It's true.
But no, I'm really excited to see it because you know what myself and Morgan Lennon specifically shot is so isolated in some ways from so much of the movie, and yet we're kind of like, we start the movie, you know, like, or we don't start the movie, but like there's the setup of the film is sort of involves us, and so it's kind of just I'm going to be seeing so much of it for the first time. I'm very curious how it all kind of fits together.
I am as well. I saw the trailer. It looks fantastic. Can't wait to check this movie out. It's theatrical. The 31st, you said, Anthony? March 31st?
March 31st, yeah, would be
cool.
Nationwide. Yep. And then Nationwide.
Nationwide? Are we looking at art house cinemas, or what's do you know, like, where should people look to find a screening?
It's pretty solid. It will be at AMC and all the big theaters, so...
I love it. I love that AMC has been programming, non-studio stuff. Like, and it's been paying off for them. That, like, Skinamarink did really well.
Yeah.
And, there's several recent examples, actually.
That's what I was gonna say. Is like for you genre nerds, or even people out there who like want to support independent movies. And I know it's such an easy thing for people to say, like, support independent cinema, but like, especially with horror, with, you know, Terrifier 2 and Skinamarink and Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, and like all these small movies that the big chains are taking quote unquote a risk on, but it's paying back so much that the more we support these things when they do get, because by the way, y'all, like, you're not going to have a VOD option on March 31st. Like, you're going to need to go see it in theaters. The VOD and Blu-ray is going to come way later. So please, like, if you're interested in supporting that kind of stuff, please get out there and do it.
Yeah, to say, this is not a scenario where it's like, oh, it's coming out theatrically and then it's going to be out 2 weeks later. No, it's going to be a few months later. So
yeah,
I love it. Like a real damn movie, and not hard to see. Go to the AMC. This is not like The Invitation, where it played a couple of like art house theaters, and then this is. I'm delighted to hear that it's going to be wide theatrically. I'm going to go check that out on the 31st, March 31st. Malum in theaters everywhere. Our plug is always the Patreon, patreon.com/screendrafts, where there's at least 3 bonus episodes every month. Actually, this month, March, there's going to be 4 bonus episodes because we're doing our franchise mini super draft of the Harry Palmer movies. That's a British spy franchise starring Michael Caine. I'm very excited to talk about. But also a lot of horror. Our Cool Kids Criterion Club Corner film this month is The Lure, which is a horror musical about mermaids. And because Scream 6 is coming out, Ryan and I are going to be going to Margaritaville and then to City Walk, and we're going to be seeing Scream 6 so we can record our mini franchise Super Draft supplement, which is also going to be this month in addition to the draft report and everything. So having a lot of fun over on the Patreon. And March 25th, 6:30 p.m., it's a Saturday, Northwest Film Forum. We're doing a live show in Seattle for Billy Ray's Make Believe Film Festival. The panel is going to be crazy. We've got Drew McWeeny, Elric Kane, Dr. Rebecca McKendry, and of course the rabble-rouser himself, Billy Ray Bruton. Those 4 are doing a mini-mega of the topic Woods horror. Any horror movie that takes place in the woods. We're talking cabins, we're talking camps, we're talking camping, maybe, I don't know, a compound in the woods. If we're surrounded by trees, and that plays into the horror, it is eligible. So this is going to be a real banger of a show, and yeah, it's free. You don't even have to have a badge for the festival. You just come see the dang thing. 6:30 p.m. Saturday, Northwest Film Forum, Seattle, Washington. Come and see us live. We'd love to say hi. Yeah, there you go. We want a rowdy crowd. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. We want a respectful, an engaged but respectful crowd.
We want a rowdy crowd.
Rowdy.
Super
No,
nice.
come on, rowdy.
Play. Be
The
polite. Be
Fantastic
nice.
Fest crowd got a little bit rowdy.
A little
Clark, I don't know
rowdy.
if you remember that. There were some people shouting some stuff during that one.
For the androids, for the robots.
For the robots one.
Yeah, they were great though. I liked it.
It was a good crowd.
Yeah, it was a good crowd.
All right. Ryan, do you have anything to plug before you get back into the game?
This Thursday, we are honoring the late, great Neil Jimenez, who passed away in December. We're showing his two movies, The Water Dance and River's Edge. His collaborators will be there. Helen Hunt's going to be there. If you've not seen those movies, they are really fantastic, both in 35 millimeter. And then we are having Kelly Reichardt come, Clay. I'm very excited.
Well, you're excited. Why did y'all...
Listen.
Why did you schedule this? We're a Kelly Reichardt in-person retrospective at the Cinematheque would have been like the highlight of my year, and you're doing it when you and I are in Seattle.
I have no control over that, my man. But the night before, we can go to Wendy and Lucy. We're leaving on Thursday. Wednesday night, Wendy and Lucy and Night Moves.
Okay.
Are going to be there.
Well, that's pretty good.
So might be a late night, and we're
Yeah.
got an early morning flight, but who cares?
But
Come
you're
on,
showing the new one. You're showing the
you're
new
young.
Hey, listen,
You're
Pacific
young.
Northwest, come and see our fucking live show because I have to miss Kelly Reichardt with her new movie at the Cinematheque to put this
Okay,
on. So if you
okay.
live within, an hour and a half of the Northwest Film Forum, I want to see you in that audience.
Clay is making a sacrifice for you.
Yeah.
He wants a sacrifice in return.
Yes.
A true
Thank
cult
you.
leader, like
I
a
was
true
just
cult
about to
leader.
say, what a segue! What a segue!
All right, those are the plugs. Let's get back into the game. Like I said, we've got 3 picks remaining in this Movies About Cults draft. Clark only's got 1 more pick at the number 2. Anthony has 2 more at the number 3 and the number 1. But of course, as Anthony told us, his number 1 is already on the list. So very curious to see how he... Anthony, without giving anything away, in the intermission, were you rearranging your personal list? Were you thinking strategy, or are you just going to take it as it comes?
I gotta be really honest here. I'm kind of stressed. I'm a little stressed. This definitive list has gotten kind of intense for me. Because she's got 2 vetoes under her belt, and it's like I don't.
Yeah, you're in the hot seat.
And the hot
Does
seat.
have 2. You have 2 picks remaining. Clark has 2 vetoes. Clark is really in the captain's chair here for the
She's
final.
in the captain's chair, and it's not that the list didn't go the way I thought it would. But it didn't go the way I thought it would. I guess because there are so many choices, and so it's tricky because I don't want to be stuck in a position where I got to put like some movie I don't really like in the number 1 position.
Right.
But we'll just we're just gonna see what happens. I guess.
Can
I think
can I
that's
just say
kinda what
there's
you
one
have to do.
surprise that I'm looking at in this list so far, and in that Satan really has not been mentioned all that much. Probably the ultimate idea of a cult. There's not a lot of Satan on this list so far, Clay.
No, Ryan, I was going to mention the exact same thing. I was going to look at kind of what we've had. We've hit multiple decades there, with the inclusion of The Wicker Man. We've got a non-horror movie on here. We've got Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. We've got a drama. So we are kind of hitting
It's interesting.
different corners of the smorgasbord here. But yeah, no.
What
devil
another
himself.
great quote. Needs more Satan.
Needs more
Great
Satan.
news.
Well, I'm not going to say. I'm not going to say it needs
Yeah,
more
no,
Satan. That's
but
not
it's
my
just
preference.
surprising.
But
Sure.
there you go. No Satan yet. But we've got 3 picks remaining. Let's see here. Who is it? Well, it's Anthony. Anthony, you've got the pick.
So I
Number
think
3.
I'm gonna play. Yeah, I'm gonna play it a little safe, a little dangerous
Ooh.
at the same time.
Sounds like the beginning of a country song. Okay. A little safe, but a little dangerous. Okay. Here we go. Anthony, I think this is a savvy play. Okay, here we go. At number 3, kicking off the top half of the list, Anthony, even though he's a rookie, is pretty savvy to the way this game is played. When you veto something to move it higher, it becomes your responsibility. And Anthony's bringing back at number 3, Mandy. Mandy, Anthony, Clark played it at 7. You vetoed it to move it up higher. The jump from 7 to 3, do you feel that reflects how you feel about the film?
I think it does. Yeah, I think putting it at 3, because to me, my kind of top 3 was moving around quite a bit. And listen, she could veto it; it could be off the list completely. We just don't know, but it was on her list. I think 3. When we talked about this, when she talked about it originally, yeah. So Panos, I think, he's an excellent visual storyteller. I think Mandy's like his most mainstream film in a lot of ways. And when I first saw it, I was like, that was cool, and it was just stunning, but I wasn't like super into it. But then the more I listened to the soundtrack, the more I listened to the score, is it Johan Johansson? I never know how to pronounce his name, who's now passed away, unfortunately.
Yes, I believe that's correct.
But it's such a beautiful score. It's something I listen to a lot, and it's like a D&D fueled metal fever dream. It's grown on me every time I see it, and I think Nick Cage just really opened up a whole new audience for himself. I mean, and I think led him to making that movie, The Unbearable Weight, which is also a really fun film. I think he's just this younger generation has really gotten behind who Nick Cage is as an actor. Someone who can and Mandy is just like Nick Cage at his most subtle and his most crazy in the whole film, so it really has all those elements. And Linus Roach, Thomas Wayne from the the Dark Knight trilogy franchise, he's just, I think, an awesome cult leader in that film, and he just knocks it out of the park. And I think that's the casting in that movie is just really good. Every person in that film is very unique looking. They really hold their own. He creates what I liked, and this is the thing. It's like what I really liked about Mandy too is that he went more of a Lovecraftian way. Like, some people will say it's satanic, but they don't ever. There's this demonic biker gang, but he really created his own mythology for that movie, which is something that we really try to do in Malin as well. And I respect that, because like satanic things can get tired and old, and it's like, oh, it's satanic, and I like that he was like, no, they're worshiping their own thing, and they're calling upon their own demonic entities, and they are certainly a cult reminiscent of the Manson family. And to segue back to Manson and to a lot of these movies that maybe won't make the list, is that music is a big part of this genre. It is with our film too. It is with the first movie, Last Shift, and Mandy's the same way. I think that inherently is because of Manson and his tie to music, and I don't know when the Wicker Man, the Wicker Man being a different kind of cult movie, this paganism film, but it is after Manson, and I wonder if they were like, obviously being 1973, that was huge in people's minds. I don't know if that whole mythology of Manson and the Beach Boys and them sitting around a circle and playing guitar and him being a musician, that really infused its way into so many of these movies. And I wonder if it influenced The Wicker Man too, being a different kind of musical, but it does. Marthy Marcy May Marlene has all this musical element to it, and so I think music is a big part of Mandy and the genre or subgenre as a whole. But the opening of Mandy, and I wrote this down: when I die, bury me deep, lay 2 speakers at my feet, wrap some headphones around my head, and rock and roll me when I'm dead. it really tells you what kind of movie you're about to watch, and it kind of lays that groundwork of music being a huge part of it.
All right, and look, excellent point about music. I mean, music's a big part of every religion.
Yeah.
You know, going back, there's something that's unlocked in your brain. You know, a process that happens when you are experiencing music, when you're singing music. It's a communal thing. I mean, I remember, like I said, I'll go back to my upbringing very, very, very quickly. You know, they would get you at these youth groups and these Christian summer camps. They get you in there. They make you sing for fucking 2 hours, and you start to get like lightheaded. And they're like, "That's the Holy Spirit." And I didn't realize until later. I was like, "Wasn't I wasn't feeling God's love or the Holy." I've been like running around all day, and then they made me sing for 2 hours. Like, of course I'm gonna start like feeling things. Like
lack of oxygen. Yeah,
lack of oxygen. That's the trick. It goes back. The trick is old as time. Ryan. Well, no. First, Clark. You vetoed this at 7. It's here at 3. You still have no. You didn't. You played it at 7. Anthony vetoed it. It's here at the. You've got 2 vetoes. Are you cool with the placement here at number 3, or what are you thinking?
Sure, I'm not gonna veto this one. I think Mandy needs to be on the list, and I co-sign everything that Anthony just said. And I love a new creature design. You know, the Russells did incredible work on Malum, and when I was watching this, I mentioned it earlier, but this was before Hellraiser was announced and any of that. But I was like, oh shit, these are some Cenobites that I want to see, you know? And so I love a monster. I love monsters. And it's just so cool. So yeah, I'm so glad I revisited Mandy. And I'm really glad it's on our list.
All right, I gotta say, hearing that the Russells worked on your movie Malum makes me even more excited. I love them. They did great work on a short film of mine that I'm still working on finishing.
Great, excellent.
They're fantastic. Ryan.
Yeah.
Mandy, finally here at number 3. What do you think about this film, and what do you think about the jump from the bottom of the list to near the top here?
It's my favorite part about this is that this kind of made the leap to the top 3, which I think is awesome. It's, again, another subgenre with the kind of rescuing a loved one from the cult, and I'm going to kind of fucking make my way through it no matter what. And this is the ultimate version of that, you know, type of movie. And it's amazing. It fucking holds up. I mean, it is a, like, full throttle, like, big screen experience. And I don't know, those types of movies now I think we're holding on to like gold, because we want to see things big, we want to see things loud. That movie is one of the few movies that captures Nicolas Cage, like allows him to work on a canvas, and that is something that like we are all so deeply appreciative of, because Nicolas Cage, you know, often it's like when he's doing something big and the movie just isn't doing that for him, not supporting him. I mean, this movie is that plus more. Like, it is nuts. This could be a number 1 in that regard. Like, I think that it is the most movie, and it is the most, you know, in terms of a cult. Fuck, man.
Yeah.
Well, I can't remember the name of their cult. Like, it's the Children of the Light.
The Royal
crazy.
Something, or
It's fantastic. Yeah. Like, just insane. And yeah, just a great trip. So happy to see this here on the list. Glad it made it to number 3.
All right, kicking off the top 3, we've got Mandy. We are over to Clark for her final pick on the list. I should say Mandy. There you go. Officially a Marquee of Fame entrant. Now,
after Cage.
Congratulations. So here we go. I've got Clark's pick on the list, her final pick on the list here at number 2. This really makes me wonder what the number 1 is going to be now. I'm fascinated. And as we know, Anthony has no vetoes. So this is the pick here at number 2, and will also, like Mandy, become a Marquee of Fame entrant here. After, what was it? Was it played on the relationship horror draft? It might have been played on the relationship horror draft. I'll have to double check that. At number 2, Clark has selected Rosemary's Baby.
So I had to make sure this was on the list. This would have been my number 1, And another film that Anthony has mentioned by name would have probably been my number 2, but I have to make sure that Rosemary makes it onto the list. And longtime listeners will know I am an Ira Levin stan. I love me some Stepford Wives.
I was trying to figure out if Stepford Wives somehow would have been eligible.
I thought about it. You know, I thought about it.
Oh, I know.
But no, I think so. And so we've been talking about it the entire show. But for me, what makes Rosemary's Baby in my opinion, the best of both worlds movie about cults, is you get to know the Castevettes and you see and experience the seduction. And of course the movie also delivers the monster, the satanic element as well. And the thing that I love about Rosemary's Baby, and I've read the novel and I have seen the movie many times. I produced and starred in a fundraiser live read of this script where we raised money for Planned Parenthood and Downtown Women's Center. And what I love about this is Rosemary's an incredibly strong, interesting, powerful character. I think Mia Farrow's performance is wonderful. I also think, though, that Mia Farrow, her physical build, she's so slight and her voice is so soft that I don't think people remember Rosemary as the active powerhouse that she is. But what I think is so devastating about this movie, upon rewatch and re-examining, is when does Guy sell her out? I love going back and trying to pinpoint the moment where he has agreed to sacrifice her for his for his desires. And when is he lying to her, and when is he telling the truth, and so on. I also love the lore of Terry D'Onofrio, the woman that she meets in the laundry room, and then they find her dead on the sidewalk. The director of Relic has made a movie that Paramount is releasing called Apartment 7A, which is allegedly the Terry D'Onofrio story. So we're revisiting Rosemary's Baby without having to remake it, which I hope is true. I loved Relic, and I really want to see her stamp on this, so that's fascinating. But anyway, I think that's why this is the definitive cult movie. You get all of the things that make this topic so fascinating and terrifying. So yeah, that's why it would be my number 1 pick, but I had to make sure it made it onto the list. So that's my spiel on Rosemary Woodhouse.
All right, Rosemary's Baby here at number 2. Maybe one of my top 10 favorite movies, I think. I agree with everything Clark said. It's an incredible performance, incredibly unnerving movie, and I think kind of a real watershed moment in horror as well. And of course, they do such a good job. Like you said, you held the fundraiser, Clark, for this for reproductive rights and everything, and just the story it tells. Specifically at that moment in history, the way it weaves in the women's movement and women's rights and reproductive rights, and not only is it a cult, it becomes this sort of patriarchal conspiracy at the same time. I mean, the thing that this movie does, it's not an isolated cult. It is, when she goes, and you think the most terrifying moment of the movie is when she goes to baby
Dr.
Charles
Saperstein.
Grodin.
Oh, yeah.
Saperstein certainly, but you're a little suspicious of him because he's buddies with the Castevettes, and even though he's very avuncular, when she goes to baby Charles Grodin, thinks, young, cool guy, doctor outside of the system, and then he's part of it. If he's not part of it, he is acquiescent to it. And it is a cult, but it is also this broader, once you open your eyes to it, it is obviously this broader patriarchal conspiracy that, there's just a lot going on in this movie. And, of course, just the filmmaking is absolutely astounding. Incredible movie. Anthony, this would have been Clark's number 1. She's playing it safe here at number 2. Again, people have conspired to do self-vetoes to move things. I'll just put that out there again. What do you think about Rosemary's Baby? Of course, the eerie coincidental connection between this movie and the Manson family via Polanski, and then tied in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's all
comes together.
This kind of creepy extra-textual stuff. How do you feel about Rosemary's Baby here at number 2?
Well, yeah, I mean, totally agree. It's a definitive movie of the genre. It definitely deserves to be on the list. And it's funny, in my early, to segue a bit here, in my early like compiling of this list, I question if Rosemary's Baby counted, because the same way I question, like, does a movie like, and I say that with funny because Malum I would call a cult movie, but it has similar things that I'm like, wait, maybe Malum's not a cult movie. Last Shift definitely was a cult movie, and I'll tell you why. Is because a movie like Eyes Wide Shut, I would not put on this list. I don't consider a movie like Eyes Wide Shut or like True Detective Season 2 cult movies or series, only because I would say it's a secret society movie, which is obviously a subgenre, but I think Rosemary's Baby being tied to Satan and a satanic cult, but the expansion of that, this is nerdy talk, but the expansion of that going to how I would define it, like, I think cults are misguided and dangerous. I think secret societies run the world. And oftentimes when you're in a movie with a secret society, the protagonist gives into it, which happens in Rosemary's Baby. You know, she says, okay, this is something bigger. I'm going to raise my child, despite it being the, spoiler alert, the son of the devil. But yes, I would totally, Rosemary's Baby, such an excellent film, should be on this list. But I do raise those. I did debate. I'm like, is Rosemary's Baby a cult movie? Does it go on the list? But that's what I'm defining in my own personal space of cult movies.
It is interesting, the distinction between secret society and cult. I guess for me, if there's a scene where everybody's standing around naked, chanting, and with a ceremonial, and the devil comes out, that tips it over for me. But people on Twitter were talking about Eyes Wide Shut, things like that. God, secret societies could be a fun draft as well. For sure.
There's subgenre there.
We're doing a 70s conspiracy thrillers episode in a couple of weeks, which will maybe touch on some of that from that era. But this really fun for storytelling. Okay, well there you go, Rosemary's Baby.
I will say
number 2.
If you've never seen, you love Rosemary's Baby, have you seen The Sentinel?
Sentinel is on my discard list.
It's been on my list forever. I have not seen The Sentinel yet.
It's a nice little, like, pocket piece to Rosemary's Baby.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's going high on the list. Ryan.
Yeah.
Rosemary's Baby.
Yep.
Marquee of Fame entrant here now. Like I said, probably one of my 10 favorite movies. One of those ones I never get sick of rewatching. Like, I definitely watch it every year, which is not common for me. There's not many movies that I do that with. What about you? Obviously, an all-time classic, a canonical choice, but sometimes those are just the right way to go.
It's one of the marker musts. I mean, it definitely it would be weird not to have this movie on. I feel like it's sort of definitional for a lot of people. If they are thinking instinctually about a movie about cults, this one definitely comes up. I mean, it also, you're absolutely, everybody's right about this in terms of where this movie goes, and it's that, like, genre breaking, that rule breaking within the genre that I think makes it so much more powerful than many other movies. It's a Paramount movie. I mean, that's the other kind of, it's a mind-blowing kind of reality when you think 1968 this movie comes out. And you're absolutely right, that tie to Once Upon a Time is very, very interesting, because I just think that this is such a fulcrum in terms of so many things, this era of 1968, 1969, and how we just kind of expanded our brain, nationally speaking, culturally speaking. And so much of it was about these sort of insidious underbellies kind of creeping up and showing us that they exist. We are here, and we're going to start sharing the planet, and that's kind of wild. Rosemary's Baby just taps into an anxiety that I think that was there for a long time and still is there to this day. When you rewatch this movie, it's so funny. but all of that comedy just is burying the catharsis of the horror and that starts from the beginning with the craziest score ever, with the lullaby and the screaming. I mean, lullabies and screaming, put that together, and it's like, fuck, man, I am already like fucked up by this movie. It's so good. Really happy that I made it to the top here. So, good job.
All right, there you go. That is Clark's final pick on the list. Round of applause.
Right. What is the number one though? Like that's
What is the number one? Anthony is paging through his
I'm
notes.
aging.
Anthony, where do you won trivia? You picked the top spot because you had a number one, and your number one ended up on the list at number 4. So, do you have a title for us?
I have a title, yeah. So I had a solid top 3 or top 4, and I still have one left from that top 4. And you know, I'm gonna. I guess I should send it to you. I'm gonna
Sending it on over.
I'm gonna segue this and talk about. Hold on one second. I'm having a. Yeah. Okay. Typing it in. So. I was really sure that Clark was going to play Midsommar on this list, and now
I don't know why. I don't like that movie at all.
I guess I didn't hear. So what was the what? I don't know. What is the Midsommar veto that happened? What is that story? I don't know it. We talked about before.
The Midsummer Maneuver. Oh,
yeah.
Shall we relitigate this?
It's bitten me. This has bitten me in the ass multiple times, but not with Midsummer though. But with the maneuver.
Yeah, the move. Basically, what happened? It was 2019 was this movie. So Ryan and I were doing the best of 2019 Mega Draft, and I knew that Ryan loved Midsommar, and I didn't care for it. So I played it at 20 or 19. I played it way at the bottom of the list. And it was the first time someone on the show had really been like, I'm going to play this movie I don't like.
Yeah.
Because I know you're going to put it on the list, and I would rather, instead of trying to veto it off the list, which then it's not on there at all, I'm acquiescing, I'm saying, I am coming to you and saying, let's split the difference. You had it high, I had it off the list, I will put it at 20.
Right.
And then it made Ryan furious, and he almost quit the show. And then people got mad about it, and I dubbed it the Midsummer Maneuver. People think it shouldn't be allowed. I don't know how you police that. Also, I think it should be allowed because it's, like I said, there's no rule that says you have to love a movie to put it on the list. You can say, I've watched the game tape. I have an assumption about what the other person's going to do. So I'll do this. Now, that said, sometimes people misread the game tape, do a Midsummer Maneuver, then the other person is like, I wasn't going to play that, and then it's on the list, and that's just
that has happened to me.
Yeah, that's happened to Clark. That's happened a few different times. So it's risky. It's a risky thing to do. But that's the origin of the...
I would have played Wicker Man probably in the top 4 if I had it. So she played that move good, putting it down low.
This time it was savvy.
It was savvy.
But it's also acknowledging, you know, I could veto it to try and get it off the list entirely, but it's acknowledging sort of preemptively the other person's point of view. So anyway, that's the origin of the Midsommar
Maneuver.
Anthony, you've delivered me your pick at number 1.
If it's
that movie.
Yeah, I know you're funny. Oh, and it's Midsummer. This is the list, unless Clark wants to start busting out those vetoes. Here we go. The movies about cults draft, as drafted by Malum writer-director Anthony DeBlasi and star Clark Wolf. Number 7, Paranormal Activity 3. Number 6, The Wicker Man, 1973. Number 5, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Number 4, The Invitation. Number 3, Mandy. Number 2, Rosemary's Baby. And at number 1, Anthony has selected Hereditary.
It's true. It just happened. I can't. You're too small.
Confirm.
You're too small on the screen, Clark, so I can't see your face. Now I can see you. Make the face. What was the face you made? Okay, that's the face. Yeah. So, Hereditary is a funny one. So I went and saw this by myself because my wife didn't want to go see it with me. And I was in a nearly empty theater seeing it pretty late at night. And I was like, man, that is not the movie I expected. It was a really disturbing film. It was more of a drama than a horror movie to me. It was just watching this family unravel and tying it back to, and when I watched it, I was like, I texted my co-writer Scott, who wrote Last Shift, and I'm like, dude, he used Payman in the fucking movie. And so, and anyone who hasn't seen Last Shift, Payman is the god they pray to, and that he becomes at the end of the movie, Payman. And we thought it was like, oh, we're picking some obscure demonic entity, you know, the King of Hell was his title. And then they did it in Hereditary. Now, you know, obviously Hereditary had a much bigger budget and a much bigger cast than we did. And I was like, that movie really stuck with me. And Toni Collette, I feel like, Oscar-worthy performance. I just don't know what else to say. I almost feel bad she didn't get nominated for an Oscar that year, because just she kills that movie. I've never seen an actress go to such heights, and in a genre film especially, that she did in that movie. But again, like, this is one of those movies that has what you would not totally define as a satanic cult, but Payman being the King of Hell, but it unfolds in such a quiet and mysterious family drama in such a disturbing way that I just, Ari Aster, I think, just knocked it out of the park with this movie. And it's one of those subgenre things that is definitely a cult, but definitely like a secret society as well, because the cult has fingers all over the community, and they're, in a lot of ways, I like to call out to Clive Barker, who I worked with for many years, his movie Lord of Illusions, if you've never seen it. I really liked in Lord of Illusions that the cult members were just people. They weren't off living in some commune. When you figure out the cult, who they are, it's like a mom killing her child and husband and then going off when he's like, okay, it's time. Like that had that flair in Hereditary as well. That, like, these were people living their lives, they were working to something bigger, and they win at the end, and it has that really kind of sinking feeling. And probably one of the most disturbing deaths in a movie.
Yes.
In a drama, in a genre movie, it's very disturbing when the daughter when she dies. So both, like, not, you go watch this movie, you're not going to feel great afterwards, but it's totally, if you haven't seen Hereditary, it's worth watching, just for her performance and for the scares in it. Just an excellent film.
All right, the pick at number 1 from Anthony, Ari Aster's Hereditary. Clark, Hereditary here, obviously, I think maybe some people, way fewer people were talking about Hereditary in terms of a cult than they were about Midsommar, maybe just because Midsommar is just more wears its on its face. This is a movie about a cult, and in Hereditary, as Anthony said, kind of is unveiled as it goes along. But how do you feel about Ari Aster? Is there pretty? I mean, we did a throwback, classic at number 2, and then a more recent movie at number 1, but one that I think is very quickly kind of cementing its like instant classic status. How do you feel about this pick top of the list?
Yeah, so this would have been my number 2. So I would have just switched them.
There you go.
And, you know, it's funny what Anthony was talking about with the idea of, like, these people in the cults, you know, like in Lord of Illusions, or even, like, with Ann Dowd's character in Hereditary. They're just people that you meet, you know, at the craft store or, like, over here. And that's, you know, Malum is not a movie about my character Dorothea, but Anthony and I certainly had those conversations in terms of, like, who she was before the inciting incident that gets her taken into the police station, gets her arrested. And that to me is what's scary about this whole subgenre or topic in general is the idea that, in my mind, like Dorothea is like a kindergarten teacher, a pre-K teacher, or she's that lady you sit next to at church, and she's not weird, she's not smelly, she might like wear an old-fashioned dress or whatever, but she's not an outlier, she doesn't stand out in any way. And to know what she is capable of and how deep that violent belief, like how deep her belief system goes to the point where she's able to become violent, is terrifying. So I love I had an interesting little journey with Hereditary in that I saw it in Austin, Texas. And I can't remember if it was a South by Southwest screening, a midnight screening at the Alamo Drafthouse. I think it was, but I can't remember. But I remember watching it. The buzz was already out because it was a Sundance movie. And the buzz was already out, and I remember watching it and being like, well, yeah, where did we expect this to go? I mean, I don't understand why horror people are freaking out about this, because this is, I mean, it's a very well-made movie, but I kind of was just like, okay. And then I watched it again, and I liked it more. And then, as you all can probably pick up from some of the conversations we've had today, I love mythology. Mm-hmm. And when a filmmaker bakes in and earns the mythology and the storytelling, I love that, especially in a genre film. And so I do with Hereditary a pause and play, where I like to sit and read the newspaper articles that he cuts to. I like to look at the pages in the book. You know, I want to know more. There's allegedly this 3.5 hour cut of Hereditary. I want to see it. Give it to me. And it's so funny because this is also one of my arguments for revisiting a movie. Now it's one of my favorite movies I've ever seen, and it's something that has stuck with me. But when the first time I saw it, I was like, I mean, okay, sure, whatever. So I think it's super compelling. I think it's the praise is well earned. I think it is terrifying. I will say, for me also, we're dealing with the idea of like not being able to take things back. So to me, the scariest part in Hereditary is Alex Wolff's face after the accident.
Yeah,
because how that is the most human thing in the movie. Mm-hmm. Of like, I've changed everything. I've mm-hmm. changed everything, and whether or not it's free will or whatever, that doesn't. Or predestined, that doesn't matter to me. What matters to me in that moment is that his character is like, I've changed my life and everyone in my life's life forever. So love Hereditary, love the score. Anthony, you played the score mm-hmm. on set for us when we were doing some scary stuff to set the mood. And I remember being like, is this the score to Hereditary? And it sure was. And I was just like, yeah, this is great. And I've used the Hereditary score in my 10th music in my film that I'm in post on right now. And the last thing I'll say is I used to host a show on Twitch called Wolf's Call, where we did a deep dive into a horror movie every week. I would do pause and plays, we talk about the research. Like, I would love just breaking down the movie. And Hereditary was the first and only time where I literally got 45 minutes into the movie over the course of 3 hours. And I was like, we got to do a part 2. We got to come back. So we're gonna pick right back up next week, because I cannot cover this in 3 hours. So anyway, love it. Happy it's on the list. Rosemary would have been 1 and Hereditary would have been 2 for me, but I have no problem with it being here.
And before you jump in, Clay and Ryan, like I think it's interesting and kind of strange, both for me and Clark, on our first viewing. And maybe it has to do with the hype. And then once you get away from that, on my first viewing, I was like, that wasn't really scary. That was just really disturbing. Like and in a way that, and I like disturbing. Funny Games, one of my favorite films, the original. I like disturbing movies, but that movie hit on a level that I was like, man, is that a horror movie? I don't know. Like, so it's the and leaving that theater being like, yeah. I mean, I think I went home and I was like, I don't know, it wasn't great. And then I revisit it, and then you're like, oh yeah, this movie's really great. And the same with Mandy, like coming away from it and coming back to it. I'm like, which I think is unique for this list, that a few of these movies where like, this movie's not great, and then it's like, oh wait, no, it's great. It's great.
Anthony, have had the exact same first half of that experience with both Mandy and Hereditary to you and Clark, where I saw them both and I was like, yeah, sure, it's handsomely made. I don't know, and it sounds like I need to absolutely now. My story with Hereditary is well, told on this show. People have heard it many times, but I saw it amidst the buzz, and I had some really annoying people in my audience.
Okay.
Some guy who was showing off some family of like adult children and two parents, and the dad, I don't know if he was freaked out and trying to like act cool, but he was basically doing like a Mystery Science Theater 3000 running bit thing during it, and loud enough that just everybody could hear it. And it was like honest to God, this is literally when the scene where the daughter with the telephone pole, he goes, I think she'll make it. And it's like doing fucking bits out loud, and I was just like, it ruined the movie for me. And on top of that, it didn't even occur to me till just now. I'm looking like, I love all these movies, I love this topic. Rosemary's Baby is one of my favorites. And I realized one of the reasons that I didn't like that Hereditary didn't pop for me was I was in the middle for like 5 years. I worked on a cult, a movie about a cult. And it was in the midst of it. Hereditary was coming out, and it had the same. When you're working on something, and then something has a similar thing in the log line, and you're like, God fucking damn it! And then you go and you're kind of like, all right, well, let's. You're both sort of like, well, let's see if it's better than mine, and also just like praying that it's different enough that So I had that with Hereditary because it kicks off with the grandparent dies and it reveals secrets. Now, of course, it's wildly different, but so I think I had that chip on my shoulder too. So Hereditary had a lot of extra shit going on. I need to sit down and properly watch it because it's number one on this list.
And after I left, I had some of those feelings about Last Shift, because it was like, oh wow, like because there are some things in that movie that are that have crossover, not a family drama at all. But so when I left that movie, I was like, they did it with a lot more money. So I had those probably similar things that you had going into it.
Yeah.
And then I just like acquiesced to the fact that it was just a fucking great movie, and a great performance. Like listen, if Toni Collette wasn't in that film, would it be on the top of my list? Probably not. Like, I mean, even if you can't watch horror movies, like, I'd say go see that movie just to see her performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan, the other thing that disappointed me about Hereditary is that the trailer focuses a lot on that really cool dollhouse. And I was hoping maybe they'd get like shrunken and trapped in it or something. I was thinking that the dollhouse was going to play into it more than it did. So I just need to go with fresh eyes. Ryan, Hereditary here, topping this list at number one.
It makes sense for me. I mean, I love the 1-2 punch of with Hereditary and Rosemary's Baby. I feel like they're sort of two sides of the same coin. They speak to each other in a lot of ways. And both have incredible central performances where the conspiracy is all around you and it's slowly closing in and slowly you're starting to understand that this is well beyond what you thought. And I just think that claustrophobic feeling has to be conveyed by a great actor delivering great material, a la like Liv Ullmann, in a Birdman. It's that level of, paranoia and anxiety and just genuine terror that the world you thought you knew is no longer the same. And Toni Collette is incredible. I want to shout out Gabriel Byrne, who I've always loved too, as being really, really great in this. Another person that you're not sure whether they're trying to hold it together or they've already been subsumed by by what's going on. The young boy, what's his name again? I'm
Alex
sorry.
Wolff.
Peace.
Yeah.
He's so good. I mean, his
Peace.
eyes are ridiculously just wells of emotion, and that's a big part of it